If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 21, Pilot 6. Each day you're getting taller, me Nino, said Gloria with a big smile as she looked at Andrew. Gloria's comment. Andrew was always very warm with Manny and me when we first met the family. He always made us feel included. He's like my second son, said Gloria with a wide smile. Andrew had a very good relationship with Jay, and when Jay met Gloria, he started spending less time alone with Andrew. Because of this, Gloria thought Andrew might hold a grudge against her and Manny, since Manny is now like Jay's son, but Andrew did no such thing. On the contrary, he got along very well with Manny and her. Gloria was very grateful for this, and that's why their bond is so close. End of comment. Thanks to eating everything on my plate, said Andrew with a smile. Used to how affectionate Gloria was though with Manny, she was much more so. Always so strict. You need to be more relaxed. Every now and then, eat some empanadas, have a coffee, some arepas, something, said Gloria, who believed that a child should enjoy good food and not always be so meticulous about counting calories, proteins, macros, etc. Veronica looked at Gloria with a confused expression. Who was this beautiful woman? And why was she speaking in both English and Spanish at the same time? Andrew. Veronica called out to avoid being ignored. Her father, Hiram, stood beside her with a slightly nervous expression as he looked at Gloria. Perhaps he should have been kinder to Andrew? Oh, yeah. That's my grandma, Gloria. And the old man lying over there sunbathing is my grandpa, Jay, Andrew introduced, pointing to Jay, who frowned slightly. Grandparents, thought Veronica and Hiram as they looked at Gloria and Jay, finding them seemingly incompatible for a very logical reason, their ages. Veronica recalled Haley mentioning Gloria's name, a woman who married her grandfather not too long ago. Now everything made sense, although she hadn't expected Gloria to be so beautiful and with such a big age difference. I'm not old enough for you to call me grandma, Andresito, said Gloria with a frown. She didn't like that nickname. And can I call Jay that? Andrew asked. Yes, Gloria replied without a second's hesitation. Stop calling me old, you two, Jay said as he got up with some difficulty. Even his outfit screamed, old man. And who are they? Gloria asked, her eyes lighting up as she looked at Veronica, a beautiful girl Andrew's age who was dressed stylishly. For Gloria, this could only mean one thing. This is Veronica. My. Andrew replied, taking a breath at the end, my girlfriend, and her father, Hiram, he said, finishing the sentence. Finally, thought Gloria, trying to contain her excitement as she greeted Veronica and Hiram. A smile formed on Jay's face. At last, his stubborn grandson had gotten a girlfriend and as expected, she had to be one of the popular ones. Perfectly balanced, as all things should be, thought Jay. Jay Pritchett, nice to meet you, said Jay with a slight smile, extending his hand to Hiram, who returned the gesture with a smile of his own. The game started. Manny seemed to be in another world, and his team was just terrible. Within 10 minutes, they had already conceded 2 goals, and it looked like this was just the beginning. Luckily, Gloria didn't yell too much, as she was busy chatting with Veronica. The two got along very well, despite only having known each other for just over 10 minutes. Jay was talking to Hiram about cars and other topics businessmen typically discuss. Don't get along so quickly. Andrew complained internally. He needed to end his relationship with Veronica as soon as possible. If his family got along well with hers, it would only make things more complicated. And why was Veronica's overprotective and intimidating father laughing heartily with Jay instead of playing his role? Don't bond with your daughter's boyfriend's family so easily. The game ended 0-6. Manny's team lost. Gloria almost ended up in a fist fight with another mom who complained to the coach about Manny, accusing him of being distracted by staring dreamily at a blonde girl Andrew's age. Andrew watched the game with a more serious expression than the coaches of either team, shaking his head several times. These kids lacked focus, concentration, the hunger to win. When Manny approached his family and saw Andrew's serious face, he paled. Oh no, not another sports lecture, he thought. Don't say a word, Andrew. Respect your uncle, Manny said, immediately going on the defensive. Besides, I'm quitting soccer. It's a game for kids, he added with an angry expression. He didn't want to waste any more time on these stupid games, he should be focusing his time on spending it with a woman and building a relationship with his future wife. Andrew didn't say anything. He didn't have the energy to start a motivational yet critical speech. Besides, Manny looked very determined about quitting soccer, so anything he said would be pointless. "No, you're not quitting. You would have stopped that goal if you hadn't been staring at that girl," Gloria said firmly. Soccer is a very popular sport in Colombia, and she didn't want Manny switching to one of those strange American sports like baseball, hockey, or something similar. "She's not a girl, she's a woman," Manny corrected. "Are you seriously 10 years old?" Andrew asked, looking at Manny as if analyzing whether it was possible that he, too, was a transmigrator like himself. But that couldn't be the case. In the series, Manny was exactly like this. "Yes. And I don't care about soccer anymore. I'm going to tell Brenda Feldman that I love her," Manny said with determination. "Oh, dear God!" Jay muttered, grabbing his head. "Brenda has a boyfriend," Veronica said, glancing up from her phone for a moment. The oddity of a 10-year-old declaring his love for a 15-year-old didn't faze her much. Manny was adorable, after all. "No," Manny murmured, looking down at the ground with a pained expression. "Don't worry, Uncle. There are plenty of fish in the sea," Andrew said, patting Manny's shoulder in an attempt to cheer him up. "And you've already chosen me. Let's go for a walk," Veronica said, putting her phone away and grabbing Andrew's arm. She bid farewell to Jay, Gloria, and Manny, and told her father to wait in the car since it wouldn't be a long walk. "Who is she?" Manny asked in surprise, watching as Veronica and Andrew walked away hand in hand. A feeling began to grow within him as he saw Andrew holding hands with a girl even prettier than Brenda Feldman, envy. "His girlfriend," Jay replied, this time patting Manny's shoulder. "Traitor. You told me soccer was everything and that you weren't even thinking about getting a girlfriend," Manny thought, filled with envy and anger toward Andrew. "You can take it out on him later. We'll go to his house for dinner." "We're on our way," Jay said, starting to walk toward his car. Andrew spent over an hour walking hand in hand with Veronica. Throughout the entire time, Veronica talked non-stop in incredible skill. After that, they said goodbye. She offered to drive him home, but Andrew declined. He needed to walk to meet his daily step goal. When he got home, he found his dad's arriving with the newest member of their family, Lily, his new baby sister. "Andrew, did you go out?" asked Cameron, carrying Lily in a baby carrier. Andrew ran toward them, not for a warm greeting but to see Lily. Ever since they left for Vietnam, he couldn't stop thinking about meeting his baby sister, and he was dying to finally see her. "She's adorable," Andrew said as he carefully held Lily. "Easy, easy," Mitchell said, helping him hold her securely. "Haha, I have a little sister," Andrew exclaimed with a wide, happy smile as he lifted Lily as high as he could. Mitchell swore he felt a sharp pain in his chest seeing such a dangerous move with a baby but said nothing. He didn't want to ruin his son's joy. "Just don't use her as a human weight," Cameron said with a smile, happy to see his son so excited. "She's too light." "Maybe when she's older," Andrew replied. "Absolutely not," Cameron exclaimed. "I wonder what sport you'll like. They say Asians are good at ping pong. I should look into a training regime focused on that," Andrew said as he carefully returned Lily to her baby carrier. "Andrew, no Asian jokes," Mitchell warned. "Haha, yeah, sorry," Andrew said, scratching his head as he followed his family inside. They happily chatted until Cameron dropped a bombshell on Mitchell. He had invited the entire family over for dinner that night to meet Lily. Mitchell had been trying to avoid telling Claire and his father, knowing they'd be critical. While they argued, Andrew spent time with Lily in her room, which was painted entirely pink with a mural that Mitchell described as very gay. The house had 3 bedrooms, much to Andrew's luck. Otherwise, he would have had to share his gamer cave with his baby sister, or they would have needed to find a new house. That evening, the family arrived to meet Lily, and everyone was overjoyed about the newest member of the family. Andrew went to bed more tired than usual, as the day had been packed with activities. Tomorrow would mark his first day of high school. Chapter 22, The Most Important Food. September 1, 2008. At 7:10 a.m., the alarm clock went off. Today marked the start of classes, the first day of 9th grade. Andrew opened his eyes, dark circles visible underneath them. He got out of bed with a groggy, half-dead expression. He hadn't slept well at all. His excellent quality of sleep had been completely destroyed by his new baby sister, Lily, who cried non-stop throughout the night at random intervals, making it all the more frustrating. When the crying stopped, you could sleep peacefully, but just before you drifted into a deep sleep, bam, she'd start crying again, loud and irritating. Andrew got up and changed at a much slower pace than usual. After that, noticing he still had some time, he turned on his computer. He wanted to check if his video on YouTube had gained more views, received any new comments, or had any updates. Not bad, Andrew murmured, noticing that the video had surpassed 100 views. Granted, many of those views were probably from him, Leonard, and Howard, but they couldn't account for all of them, so it was a good sign. His subscribers were still only 2, Leonard and Howard. They were also the only ones who rated the video 5 stars. Andrew couldn't wait for YouTube to switch to the classic like/dislike system. Maybe he should give them a call and suggest the idea if they'd even take a 15-year-old kid seriously. I'll upload another video today, Andrew thought as he turned off the computer. He had 2 videos already recorded and ready to be uploaded. The ideal schedule would be around 4 videos a week. He needed to calculate precisely how much time it took to record, edit, and upload videos, especially now that he had football practice 4 times a week, with each session lasting over 2 hours. On top of school, his time would be limited. He needed to get organized. Andrew headed to the kitchen, where his dad Cameron was preparing breakfast, and his dad Mitchell was sitting at the table, reading the newspaper and sipping his morning coffee. "Good morning." "Great night, hey," said Andrew, flopping into the chair like dead weight, which groaned under his weight. "Yeah, fantastic," Mitchell replied in a weary tone, glancing at Andrew. He also had large dark circles under his eyes. "Do you know how many times I had to wake up?" 8. Mitchell said indignantly, setting the newspaper down on the table. "You weren't the only one who woke up," Kim said, turning around and placing Andrew's breakfast in front of him: oatmeal, egg whites, a protein shake, and fruit. "I had to get up more times than you," Mitchell added in a competitive tone, as if winning would earn him some kind of prize. "It's not a competition," Kim said, shaking his head and starting to eat his own breakfast. He was starving after such a stressful night. "I never thought a baby could make so much noise," Mitchell complained, rubbing his eyes. "And what about you, Andrew? Did you sleep through the night like always?" "No. I woke up a few times, but at least I didn't have to stand guard like you two," Andrew replied, taking a sip of his shake. Andrew couldn't help but glance at Cam's breakfast: fried eggs, greasy bacon, and buttered toast. "What's wrong?" Kim asked, raising an eyebrow at Andrew. He knew how strict his son was about food. It wouldn't be the first time Andrew tried to convince him to eat healthier. "Your entire breakfast is empty calories. Saturated fats," Andrew said, unable to resist giving him a critical look. Here we go again, thought Mitchell. He wasn't sure what was worse, Andrew's nutrition lectures or Lily's crying. "I know. But you have to be indulgent. Life is for enjoying, right?" Kim said with a chuckle, taking a bite of his toast. "That's not being indulgent, Dad. If you eat like that every day, it's not indulgence, it's a habit," Andrew retorted. "Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. The fuel that gives you energy to start the damn day," Andrew exclaimed, his voice full of emotion as if he were giving a motivational nutrition speech. "Oh boy," Mitchell thought, resuming his reading of the newspaper. "I know, Andrew. You've said that 100 times. By the way, what's going on with your girlfriend?" Kim said, quickly changing the subject with a mischievous grin. Mitchell tuned into the conversation. They were both surprised to find out the day before that Andrew had a girlfriend after the small party they threw for him, thanks to them. They were great parents. "Take that, Claire," Mitchell's thought. They didn't get to talk about it further because the whole family came over for dinner and they exhausted from the trip. So, the mystery of Andrew's new girlfriend was left hanging in the air. Andrew stared at his oatmeal with a grimace on his face. "Oh, that," he said. Kim and Mitchell exchanged looks. "And?" Kim pressed, his eyes fixed on his son. "What's up with that girl? It turns out Veronica declared her love for me in front of everyone at the party. And I didn't want to reject her, because if I did, there'd be a scene. So I ended up being her boyfriend. Life's pretty crazy, hey?" Andrew said with a sigh. Chem and Mitchell sat in silence for a moment, processing the information. Then, in unison, they exclaimed, "Damn it! What's going on with them all of a sudden?" Andrew thought, looking at them strangely. "So, our strategy to help you be more social resulted in a relationship by obligation," Kim said, frowning. "Strategy?" Andrew repeated, furrowing his brows. He knew exactly what his parents were trying to do, but hearing it from their mouths made everything even stranger, for lack of a better word. "Oh, no. I didn't mean strategy, I meant spaghetti." "Yes, spaghetti. Today is September 1st, and the Tucker family has the obligation to eat spaghetti every year, no exceptions," Cameron said with a nervous laugh. Andrew rolled his eyes and said nothing. "They never ate spaghetti on the 1st of September." "Well. Looks like you've got a teen movie plot on your hands," Mitchell said, sighing. "How do you plan to handle it?" Cameron asked with a thoughtful expression, as if searching for a way to help Andrew get out of the situation without anyone getting their heart broken. "I don't know. I'll think of something at some point. For now, it's not like the relationship is unbearable or anything," Andrew replied. Just then, a message arrived on his phone, and when he read it, his expression darkened. "I spoke too soon," Andrew thought, feeling like the words on the screen were a virtual slap he had given himself. "What's going on?" Mitchell and Cameron asked. Andrew turned the phone toward his parents without saying a word. On the screen appeared a message from Veronica. "Hi, good morning, Andy. I was thinking we could hang out this afternoon after your football practice. Does that sound good? Two hearts, see you in a bit." "Oh," Mitchell said, not knowing what else to add. "She seems very determined and polite. Are you sure you don't like her?" Cameron asked, remembering Veronica. "She always attended Andrew's games and was a good friend of Haley. A very pretty girl." "I don't have time for a girlfriend, or dating," Andrew said, placing the phone on the table. He already had enough on his plate with 7 hours of school and more than 2 hours of practice. If he has a girlfriend, when will he have time to upload videos to YouTube, play video games, or read comics? "It's hard to believe a guy your age would say that," Mitchell said in a low tone. For most guys his age, everything revolved around romance and the gossip in high school. For example, Howard and his desperation to get a girlfriend. "We'll figure something out so you can break up with your girlfriend, but you're already late." "You must leave," Cameron said, standing up from his chair. Andrew gathered his things, and before leaving, he silently said goodbye to Lily so as not to wake her. "Dad," Andrew said, looking at Cameron, who had followed them to the door. "Yes," Cameron replied, intrigued. "Even though I hate your greasy breakfasts, your buttery lunches, and anything with more than 2 layers of cheese." Andrew paused. Cameron blinked, confused. "Hey," Andrew continued, "even with all that, I love you, Dad. Even if you still think fried food is a valid food group." "Well, I love you too, but just so you know, cheese is a pillar of happiness," Cameron said with a smile. "And blocked arteries," Andrew responded. "Don't curse my cheese in this house," Cameron exclaimed with mock indignation. "Whatever you say, Dad." "See you later," Andrew said, walking out the door. Mitchell said goodbye to Cameron, grabbed the car keys, and followed him. Today, he would take Andrew to school, since it was the first day and the start of his high school journey. A very special time. Mitchell was happy to take Andrew. Cameron couldn't, since he had to take care of Lily. When Mitchell and Andrew left the house, they were both surprised to see not one, but 2 cars parked in front of their house. Chapter 23, Start of Classes. When Mitchell and Andrew left the house, they were both surprised to see not one, but 2 cars parked in front of their house. One of the vehicles was his grandfather Jay's truck, who stepped out to greet Andrew and Mitchell. In the back seats was Manny, with his backpack and a slightly drowsy expression. "Hey, Dad, what are you doing here?" Mitchell asked, eyeing Jay cautiously. If there was one thing he knew, it was that his father wasn't here just to chat with him. "Hey, Mitch." "Andrew," Jay greeted with a slight nod. "I was taking Manny to school and remembered that you're starting school today too." "First day of high school, a big day," Jay said, looking at Andrew. "So what?" Mitchell asked before Andrew could speak. "I could take Andrew. His school is near Manny's, and you have to get to work. Unlike you, I manage my own schedule since I'm the boss, Jay replied, and Mitchell's expression was far from pleased for several reasons. Oh no, causing misunderstandings again, Andrew thought. His grandfather wasn't the best at expressing himself. I'll go with my dad, Grandpa. He has time to take me, Andrew said, jumping into the conversation. Jay looked slightly disappointed, though he hid it well. But you can follow us. You'll be our escort. It'll make for a grand entrance, he added with a smile. Fine, let's go. Jay said with more enthusiasm. At least he wouldn't be left out of Andrew's first day of high school. Andrew then approached the second vehicle, an impressive 4x4 truck. The windows were down, and he recognized everyone inside, his football teammates Reggie, Archie, Steve, Kevin, and Kevin's older brother, who was driving. Reggie stuck his head out of the window. Come on, Andrew. We'll follow you, we can't be late. He exclaimed, excited about the new chapter of life starting today. Better to be late. That makes us cooler, Steve said as he munched on some croissants, making a mess. Hey, Steve, I told you not to eat in the car. Kevin's brother complained, turning around and snatching the croissant from Steve. Looks like you'll have 2 escorts for your first day of school, Mitchell said. Yeah. Andrew replied with a strange expression, watching the commotion that had started in the truck, with Steve yelling and trying to get his croissant back. Let's go, he added as he headed to the car. Mitchell's car was followed by Jay and the 4x4 truck carrying Andrew's friends. After a few minutes, they arrived at school just in time. Many students were at the entrance, accompanied by their parents. Most of them just wanted to get rid of their parents as quickly as possible, not wanting to endure embarrassing conversations. As for Andrew, he didn't mind. He said goodbye to Mitchell with a hug and to Jay with a firm handshake. Then he walked in, followed by his friends, for some reason positioned right in the middle like the leader of a gang. I can't wait for the day to end so we can get to practice, Reggie said with a smile. He was already eager to earn a spot on the team and see how things worked in high school. It shouldn't be hard, they'd secure their positions quickly, especially with Andrew leading them. As for the tryouts to join the team, those were already taken care of. They had all done them over the summer. Throughout July, they participated in the football team tryouts. The coach evaluated them and chose the new team members for the year. Now, they just had to earn starting positions against the senior students. We haven't even had our first class yet. Kevin said, shaking his head. It's not all about football. If you want to play at the college level, you need to keep good grades, Andrew commented seriously. To go pro, certain academic requirements had to be met. At the very least, you needed a minimum GPA of 2.3 on a 4.0 scale, about AC and average. Andrew wasn't a great student in his past life. He struggled to maintain AC and average because he never had enough time. However, now he placed more importance on his studies, so his grades were higher compared to before. Plus, he had already learned most of the material, though he wasn't a genius like Leonard, Howard, or his cousin Alex. I know, Captain. Don't worry, we've got 4 years, Reggie said with a relaxed smile. He was the worst of the group when it came to grades, but he didn't care much about it. In the first period, Andrew had math. Unfortunately for him, he shared the class with Veronica, meaning he had to keep up the act of being her boyfriend. Luckily, Haley and Steve were also there, with Steve always making dumb comments. Haley didn't know about his mature decision to accept Veronica's confession to avoid humiliating her in front of everyone. Claire had told him not to tell Haley for some reason he didn't understand. As for Alex, she also kept the secret. She didn't care much and knew her sister was annoyed that Andrew had a girlfriend, so it worked in her favor to have Haley stay upset. Veronica brought up the topic of their date after practice, but Andrew managed to dodge the subject without giving an answer. He knew, though, that the school day was long, and he'd have to address it eventually. The following periods continued until 11:50 a.m., English, Science, and History. Unfortunately, he didn't share any of them with Leonard or Howard. He'd have to try talking to them during lunch if possible. In history class, Andrew didn't have any of his friends or acquaintances with him, no Haley, Veronica, or any friends from the football team. So, when the class ended, he walked alone toward the cafeteria. It's nice not getting so many stares, Andrew thought. In middle school, he had been extremely popular, and wherever he went, he'd get stares and whispers. Here, he wasn't as well known, although he didn't go completely unnoticed either. Dylan, a senior, recognized him from an interview and had even watched some of his middle school games, so he wasn't entirely unknown to the other students. As he turned a corner at a blind spot, he bumped into someone, causing them to fall to the ground and scatter a pile of books they had been carrying. The person who had collided with Andrew felt like they had run into a brick wall. Andrew hadn't even moved an inch, it would take much more force to push or trip him. Ouch! Is your skin made of metal or something? Muttered a girl, rubbing her forehead with a slightly annoyed expression. Oh, sorry. Are you okay? Andrew asked, crouching down to pick up the books. He hadn't heard the girl's murmur. The girl stopped rubbing her forehead and looked up at the person she'd bumped into. Andrew Pritchett? She asked. Do we know each other? Andrew asked, examining the girl more carefully, pale skin, short brown hair with lighter tips, and striking blue eyes. He couldn't recognize her. No, of course not. Sorry for bumping into you, the girl said hurriedly as she stood up and snatched the books from Andrew's hands. Within moments, she disappeared from his sight. Well, that was weird, Andrew thought, and without giving it further importance, he resumed his walk to the cafeteria. When he arrived, he saw his friends calling him over from a table. They had saved a seat for him, so he went over and sat down. Haley, Veronica, and two of their friends were also there. Why did it take you so long? Haley asked, sipping her drink. The history teacher talks really slowly, Andrew replied, dropping into the chair. He glanced at the long line in the cafeteria and sighed. He needed food that met his nutritional requirements, but he knew he wouldn't find it there. Cafeteria food wasn't the best option. Public school lunches weren't exactly high-quality meals. His meals were usually prepared by Cam, but not this time since Cam had been too busy with Lily, last night's dinner, and other things. Andrew hadn't been able to cook for himself either, having been busy all day Sunday. What's with your face? Steve asked, happily munching on his cafeteria sandwich. You've known Andrew for years, and you seriously ask that, you idiot. Haley said, shooting Steve an irritated look. What? What did I do now? Steve protested, confused and slightly offended. The thing is, Steve, Veronica chimed in with an indulgent smile, Andrew has standards. Unlike you, he can't just eat any greasy thing and call it food. Eating an oily cafeteria sandwich is practically sacrilege for him. Andrew sighed and rolled his eyes, though part of him appreciated the defense. I'm not that picky. He thought, even though he did prefer bringing his own home-cooked meals. Hey, I like the food here. Archie said proudly, defending the cafeteria's honor. Now that's the spirit. Steve said, talking with his mouth full of food. Haley shot him a disgusted look. Yeah, well, your arteries might have a different opinion, Kevin quipped, laughing, echoing a phrase Andrew had often used. Well, I figured the food here wouldn't be good enough for you, so I brought you this, Veronica said, pulling an elegant glass container from her bag. The container was filled with perfectly cooked chicken, rice, steamed vegetables, and a small packet of homemade dressing. She placed it in front of Andrew with a proud smile. Everyone at the table fell silent for a moment, staring at Veronica, until Reggie broke the calm. Did you buy that somewhere? He asked, sounding both surprised and confused. No, my cook prepared it this morning, Veronica replied as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Cook? Kevin repeated, raising an eyebrow. You have a cook? Of course. What's so strange about that? Veronica asked, glancing around with genuine confusion. The fact that we're at a public school, Archie said, laughing. What are you doing here, rich girl? You should have gone to Ridge School, Steve said with a laugh. Veronica frowned at his comment. Her parents had suggested transferring her to that prestigious private school since they could afford the tuition and her grades were good, but she didn't want to leave her friends. And what are you doing here, Steve? I thought you'd lost all your brain cells in the last game. It's a miracle you even passed your grade, Veronica shot back, frowning. Hey! Steve thought. He had only been joking. Thanks, Veronica, Andrew said with a smile. This had saved him. It had protein, carbs, and vegetables, everything he needed. You're welcome, Veronica said happily, pleased to see Andrew's smile. By the way, are we going out today after your training? She asked. Andrew knew he couldn't dodge the question anymore after receiving such a valuable meal. How about Saturday? Training lasts over 2 hours, so I'll finish late and all sweaty. On Saturday, we'll have the whole day, Andrew suggested, and Veronica happily agreed. More than 2 hours of training? Haley asked, incredulous that they had to train for so long. You've known Andrew for years, and you seriously ask that, idiot? Steve said with a smile, seizing the perfect opportunity for payback. Haley elbowed him square in the side, making Steve let out a groan and shrink into his seat. Hey! Violence! Steve protested, rubbing his side. Lunch continued as the group chatted enthusiastically and joked with one another. At a solitary table in the corner of the cafeteria, Andrew noticed Leonard and Howard. They caught his glance, but Andrew quickly looked away and refocused on his food. He wanted to talk to them about comics, movies, video games, YouTube, and more, but he couldn't bring himself to approach them in such a public space. It wasn't a rejection of Leonard and Howard. The problem was the situation he had created for himself. For years, he had kept those interests a secret, not because there was anything wrong with them, but because they simply didn't fit the kind of friendship he had built with his football teammates and others. How would he explain now that he loved Star Wars, could recite entire lines from The Lord of the Rings, or spent whole nights playing video games? It's happening again, just like in my previous life, Andrew thought, feeling a pang of regret in his chest. At that moment, a boy approached the table and called out to him. You're Andrew Pritchett, right? Chapter 24, Scene in the Cafeteria. You're Andrew Pritchett, right? Andrew stopped focusing on his delicious lunch and looked at a boy with an average appearance who seemed a bit older than them. He was wearing the typical jacket athletes wore. Yes, what do you need? Andrew asked, and everyone turned to the boy, waiting for his response. Jason and the guys want to talk to you, the boy replied, pointing toward a table in the middle of the cafeteria where several boys in matching jackets sat with a group of very pretty girls. Go introduce yourself, the boy added in a commanding tone, causing Reggie, Archie, and the others to frown. Andrew, however, kept the same expression. All right, Andrew responded, his voice calm and without anger. He stopped looking at the older student and turned his attention back to his food. Why aren't you getting up? The boy asked after a few seconds of silence. He had thought Andrew would stand and follow him to the table with the others, but Andrew continued eating calmly. I'll go when I finish my meal. Is that a problem? Andrew asked, looking at him briefly. No, of course not. The boy said, quickly returning to his table with his friends. What do they think this is, a military school? Steve complained as he took a bite of his sandwich. Eat with your mouth closed, Veronica said with a disgusted look, watching him. It was already the second time he was eating with his mouth open. Senior students are always so aggressive. It's like they want to mark their territory every time someone new shows up, Kevin said, crossing his arms with a frustrated air. It had been the same when they entered middle school. Just ignore them, Andrew said, finally finishing his lunch, wiping his mouth with a napkin and taking a sip of water. If they need to intimidate younger guys to feel important, that says a lot about them. His tone was calm, but his words carried a clear note of disdain that didn't go unnoticed by his friends. Reggie chuckled under his breath, while Archie snapped his fingers in approval. But you still need to be careful, Kevin insisted. Seniors always find a way to make life hard for the newcomers, and you, well, you already have enough attention on you. I don't think they'll throw you a welcome party. Hazing. I read something like that on a website, Steve commented. I'm not worried. They haven't won a district championship in all these years, and Jason and his friends are in their last year. This is their last chance, and they won't make the most of it, because we're here, Andrew said calmly. That's true, Reggie commented, looking at Kevin. The senior team always ends up third or fourth in our district. They haven't made it to state in, what? 10 years. 12, Kevin corrected. This school stinks. They should be grateful we're here, Steve said with an arrogant smile, crossing his arms. Please, Steve. If it were up to you, the team would only win in the skill of eating snacks during the game, Haley said. Reggie and Archie burst into laughter, while Kevin tried to hold back a smile. Steve, not missing a beat, pointed at Haley with an indignant look. You're always against me. Is it because you like me? My mom always told me she used to argue with my dad in school. Shut up! Haley exclaimed, furious at the statement, as she started hitting Steve, who had no choice but to block. "Well, I think it's time. Let's see what the seniors want," Andrew said calmly. Andrew stood up slowly, and the others stopped laughing and talking. Reggie, Steve, Archie, and Kevin immediately followed, also standing up from the table. However, they weren't the only ones who stood up. From different tables spread across the cafeteria, other students also got up. They were Andrew's teammates from middle school, those who had followed him through 2 victorious district seasons. Some had been chatting, others had just started eating, but all of them noticed when Andrew stood, so they stopped what they were doing and followed him. Andrew walked at the front while his friends and teammates flanked him on either side. More than 15 students, in an orderly, almost martial fashion, made their way toward Jason and his group's table. "This is incredible," Andrew thought, making a titanic effort to maintain a serious expression. Everyone's eyes were fixed on him and his group, creating an atmosphere that could only be described as epic. In his mind, he couldn't help but picture it as a scene from his favorite movies or a video game. "What kind of training did they make you do to look like military?" Haley asked from her table, her eyes wide open at the scene. Veronica and her friends simply shook their heads, though they couldn't hide their amused smiles. They knew Andrew was a training fanatic, obsessed with discipline and constant improvement, but this went beyond what they had imagined. He had turned a group of teenagers into a coordinated force marching like soldiers on a mission. "Who's Jason?" "I'm here. What do you need?" Andrew asked. His voice was firm but respectful, with no trace of arrogance. Behind him, more than 15 guys stood silently, backs straight, supporting him. There was no need to be arrogant when you had the backing of over 15 of your peers. "I'm Jason," said an athletic, blonde, blue-eyed boy, exchanging a glance with one of his friends, clearly uncomfortable. He hadn't expected such a display. "We just wanted to welcome you and remind you not to be late. The coach is very strict about that," Jason added, forcing a smile. His friends and the girls at his table were surprised by his tone, as it wasn't the confident and arrogant tone they were used to. "Thanks for the reminder. See you at practice," Andrew said, bidding them goodbye and turning around. The guys who had followed him remained silent and straight. "Dismiss!" Andrew exclaimed in a loud, firm voice. "Yes." The guys responded, and began to disperse, returning to their tables, except for the main crew, Archie, Reggie, Steve, and Kevin. Andrew returned to his table followed by Archie and the others, under the gaze of everyone in the cafeteria. He now realized that perhaps staging such an epic scene wasn't the best idea, as he was about to become the center of attention again. "Interesting. Not bad," murmured a girl with long, straight blonde hair sitting at Jason's table. "What did you say, Regina?" asked her friend, looking at her. She had been paying attention to the surreal situation that had just unfolded and hadn't heard her. "Nothing," replied the blonde girl, named Regina. After lunch, classes continued. He had the 5th and 6th periods of the day. After finishing those, he had his last class, which was an elective. Andrew chose technology as his elective. The class was called Introduction to Programming. He had always loved video games, and he preferred a subject like this over studying foreign languages, visual or performing arts, or anything else. As he entered the classroom, a smile spread across his face. In the first row were Leonard and Howard chatting. Finally, he had a class with them. Chapter 25, Pipa Fitzamobi. "Hi, guys. We finally have a class together," said Andrew, sitting right behind Leonard and Howard. The desk was set up with a computer, monitor, mouse, and keyboard. "Hey! Did you really choose programming as an elective?" Leonard asked, confused. It wasn't the kind of subject you'd expect a popular athlete to pick. They weren't the only ones surprised by this. Several students in the classroom who knew him from middle school also looked at him with surprise when he walked in. "Why are you all so surprised? You've seen my room," Andrew said with a slight smile. Just by looking at his room, which had a PC loaded with video games, a console, comics, and more geeky stuff, it was clear why programming would interest him. "That's true. I thought it was all just a dream," said Howard, staring at Andrew and touching his arm to make sure he was real. "Don't say a sentence you could say to a girl," Andrew said, pulling his arm away from Howard's hand with a grimace. Leonard laughed lightly. "Whatever. That thing in the cafeteria was amazing. It was like the army of Gondor was marching." You just needed to give an epic speech, Howard said enthusiastically. It was tempting to shout something dramatic, but it wasn't the right moment, Andrew said, laughing quietly. It would have ruined the moment, and only a few people would have gotten the reference. The cafeteria looked like the Black Gate, and you were Aragorn, Leonard added. It was impressive. Everyone follows you without you saying a word. How do you do that? It wasn't hard. I push them so hard in training they don't know if it's day or night, Andrew replied, his tone calm but with a gleam in his eyes that sent chills down Howard and Leonard's spines. But not too much. The human body has its limits, and learning to respect them is key. If you push them too far, the next day they won't be able to stand up, and that ruins all the progress. You have to know when to stop squeezing, Andrew added. Stop squeezing. Howard and Leonard repeated in unison. Andrew ignored them and continued, the trick is knowing when to stop. If you let them recover, their bodies adapt, and when they start noticing they're faster, stronger, or have more stamina, they motivate themselves. It's like a snowball, every little improvement pushes them to want more. They stick to the regimen because they know it works. So basically, you turn them into progress addicts, Leonard commented, eyeing Andrew cautiously. It doesn't sound great the way you put it, but yeah, something like that, Andrew said. Howard swallowed hard and asked, you only apply that to the team, right? We're not on the team, he clarified, just in case. Andrew raised an eyebrow. I'm not going to turn you into physical progress addicts. Though, didn't you feel better after biking the other day? Well, yeah, wait. You're trying to convince us right now, aren't you? Howard said, looking at Andrew suspiciously. Andrew shrugged with an innocent smile. I'm just telling the truth. Releasing endorphins helps combat stress, improves mood, and even boosts concentration. Science backs it up. Don't you think it'd be good for you? Blah, blah, blah. I'm not listening to your temptations anymore. Howard said loudly, covering his ears. The one who perseveres will win, Andrew said. He could already envision a near future where Leonard and Howard regularly went to the gym and had respectable muscle mass. You're really good at convincing people, Leonard commented with a smile. If I didn't have asthma, I might actually consider it, he added. That's sad, man, Andrew said sympathetically. All right, class, quiet. The professor said as he entered the room, which had about 20 students. However, the only ones talking were Andrew, Leonard, and Howard. Oh. A respectful class for a change. The professor muttered to himself as he positioned himself in the center, looking over the group he'd be teaching all year. My name is Elliot Smith, and this year I'll be your guide into the fascinating world of programming, the professor announced. He was a man in his 30s with light brown, slightly messy hair and glasses sliding down the tip of his nose. Professor Smith wrote the year's syllabus on the board. Afterward, he asked the students to turn on their computers and open the program they'd be using throughout the course, Eclipse IDE. Eclipse IDE is an integrated development environment used for creating various software applications, particularly in Java. Being free and open source, it's one of the most popular Java IDEs in the tech world. That's what the professor explained. Andrew curiously examined the program's interface as it loaded, a top toolbar with options like File, Edit, and Run, a side panel called Project Explorer for managing and organizing projects, a central window, the editor, where they'd write their code, and a console at the bottom, where program results or error messages would appear. Professor Smith strolled slowly between the students, ensuring everyone had Eclipse open and running correctly. Then he returned to the front of the class and wrote on the board, "Hello World. Let's create our first program," Smith said enthusiastically. Andrew was one of the first to complete the Hello World program. It was very easy for him, and he never imagined he'd excel in a school subject like programming. Studying had never been his strong suit. However, he now had a clear advantage since he had transmigrated into the body of a 5-year-old. If he struggled with something as simple as Hello World, he'd be a hopeless idiot. Since he had extra time, he decided to write a slightly more ambitious program. He aimed to create one that calculated the average of 3 grades input by the user. After a few minutes, he finished, but it didn't work. What's wrong? Andrew muttered to himself, staring at the screen with confusion and a bit of frustration. That's not going to work like that, said a female voice from his right, pulling him out of his thoughts. Andrew turned his head and saw a girl with short brown hair and blue eyes. Excuse me. Andrew asked, looking at her pale face. He recognized her. It was the girl he had bumped into on the way to the cafeteria a few hours ago. Your program. It's not poorly written, but I can see you mixed up the order of operations, the girl said, pointing to specific spots on the screen. And you forgot to use parentheses before dividing. Right now, you're just dividing the last grade by 3, she added. Andrew blinked and looked back at his code. She was right. With the error spotted, Andrew quickly fixed his code, and when he ran it this time, it worked. And here I thought I'd have an edge in at least one academic subject on the first day of school. Andrew thought as he glanced at the girl sitting to his right, now focused on her own computer. Thanks, but I don't know your name, Andrew said. Oh, right, I didn't introduce myself, the girl replied with a slightly rushed smile, as if suddenly realizing she'd forgotten something obvious. I'm Pipa. Pipa Fitzamobi. Andrew nodded, silently repeating the unusual name in his mind to remember it. Andrew, though I guess you already know that, he said, recalling how she'd mentioned his name earlier when they bumped into each other. Yeah, the quarterback, right? We went to the same middle school. Everyone used to talk about you, Pippa remarked. And after the scene you pulled in the cafeteria, it'll probably be the same here, she added. Yeah, haha, Andrew said, scratching the back of his neck awkwardly. They both returned to their work. Out of curiosity, Andrew glanced at Pippa's screen and saw some very complicated code. Whoa, you're really advanced. Are you passionate about programming? Andrew couldn't help but ask. Someone writing such complex code couldn't be considered a beginner. Not at all. I just read in my free time. I guess I enjoy learning new things, don't you? Pippa replied as she continued typing more code. Andrew nodded, but his response was more of a reflex than an actual agreement. He then glanced at the screens of Howard and Leonard, who were sitting across from him. Like Pippa, those two were writing complex code that Andrew found difficult to understand at a glance. When the bell rang, signaling the end of class, Andrew leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. We're definitely in different leagues, he murmured to himself with a smile. It wasn't a complaint, it was an acceptance. Each one of them has his area in which he stands out as a genius, in his case it is sports. With classes over, Andrew headed to practice with his friends and teammates who were also on the team. They arrived several minutes early. In this way, more than a week passed. Chapter 26, Programming Partner. Thursday, September 11, 2008. Several days had passed since Andrew started school. The next day, Friday, the team would play their first game, although it was just a friendly match. The regular season wouldn't begin this Friday but the next, lasting until late October or early November. They would face neighboring schools within the Los Angeles Unified School District, LASD. The teams with the best win-loss records during the regular season advanced to the regional playoffs, which are single-elimination games. Andrew's school hadn't made it to the playoffs in many years. Their district was highly competitive, and they were just a regular public school. However, since Andrew and his peers joined, everyone in the school community believed this year could be different. At the middle school linked to the same high school, they had won 2 district championships in a row, something unprecedented in the school's history, fueling high hopes. There was only one current issue, the seniors and the coach. Although the seniors didn't make it to the playoffs last year, they came very close. Replacing them as starters with 9th grade students was seen as a drastic move. Additionally, the coach was Jason's uncle, the team's quarterback. Despite Andrew outperforming Jason in every aspect during practice, pass accuracy, running, endurance, decision-making, etc., he was still not the starting quarterback and would most likely watch tomorrow's game from the bench. Even so, Andrew didn't mind. He understood that's how things worked in sports teams. No matter how good you are, you won't get the starting position right away unless you're a world-renowned player joining a new team. Besides, the first game was just a friendly to warm up, so he didn't care much about playing or not. Still, there was a lot of anticipation as it would set the tone for the team's season. Andrew wasn't paying much attention to the first friendly game of the season. For the first time in his life, his mind was more preoccupied with something other than football, his YouTube channel. It had been about 12 days since he uploaded his first video, and things had escalated far beyond what he ever imagined, even in his wildest dreams. In those days, he had uploaded a total of 5 videos, all featuring Call of Duty matches. They followed the same format Leonard and Howard had seen in the first video: chill commentary, informative content, and an effort to be charismatic, so it wasn't just a silent gameplay. His channel had already accumulated approximately 35,000 views. Part of this unexpected success was thanks to Leonard and Howard, who had shared his videos on forums and social media platforms like Facebook and Reddit. They already had accounts with some reputation in niche gaming forums. As for subscribers, he had reached the incredible number of 786 in just 12 days. Although, considering the percentage relative to the views, it wasn't a huge figure. At this rate, it wouldn't take long to reach the milestone of 1,000 subscribers, a number he once saw as distant and hadn't even had time to process mentally. The success had come so quickly that even he hadn't anticipated it. I should edit and upload the video today, Andrew thought, analyzing his day and figuring out when he'd have some free time to do it. Last night, he recorded a match. It went really well, with a ton of kills and on a newly added map. He was confident people would find it useful to get to know the map better. Andrew slung his backpack over his shoulder, said goodbye to Cam, Mitch had to leave for work earlier, and started heading toward the door. "Wait, Andy. You're forgetting your lunch," Cam said, holding out a container as he hurried toward Andrew, who had already opened the door. "Oh, right," Andrew replied, his thoughts still on YouTuber stuff. "It's unusual for you to forget your lunch. I'd ask if you're thinking about your girlfriend, but given the truth about that relationship," Cam said as he handed him the container, letting out a slight sigh. Andrew couldn't help but sigh when he heard Cam. He had to go out with Veronica last Saturday and Sunday, and it was very likely the same would happen this weekend. The 2 dates were endless, with Veronica only talking about herself. Then there were the never-ending phone calls where Veronica wouldn't tire of talking, and Andrew would respond with monosyllables. Sometimes, he'd leave the phone on the table and go to the bathroom. When he came back, she'd still be talking as if nothing had happened. "You need to break up with her," Cam said, noticing Andrew's sigh. He had seen him go on those dates and talk with Veronica. It was clear Andrew wasn't interested. "Yeah, soon," Andrew said, putting the matter off. He didn't like confrontations with friends or loved ones and wasn't great at handling such situations. He was already the kind of person who found it hard to say no and was always willing to help others. The only time he was truly competitive was in football, where the last thing on his mind was the feelings of his opponents. "The bus isn't here yet. Mr. Harrison is always late," Andrew complained, glancing down the street. "I should ride my bike," he added. "Absolutely not. It's 8 kilometers to school. You'd arrive sweaty, and it's dangerous at the speed you ride your bike," Kim said firmly. A normal student might take 30 minutes to cover 8 kilometers by bike, but Andrew could do it in 15 minutes. However, the speed he'd be riding at was far too fast and dangerous for Kim's liking. After a few more minutes of waiting, the bus arrived, and Andrew got on. The school day passed without any issues. In his programming class, they had already progressed beyond the simple first program from the initial class, Hello World. "All right, class, listen up," said Professor Smith. "Today, I'm introducing your first major project. It's a group assignment. You will work in pairs to create a functional and creative app. It can be a simple game, a useful tool, or something that solves a daily problem. The important thing is that it reflects what we'll be learning these months, from programming logic to basic interfaces. You will have flexibility to choose your idea, but I want it to be something that motivates you," explained Smith. A slight buzz spread through the class. Smith raised his hand to calm the students. "Pick your partners now. If you have any questions about your project, come ask me. This won't just be fun, it will be a very important assignment for your grade." Andrew looked toward the front, where Leonard and Howard were already discussing which app to make. Despite spending more time with them in the last few days, his friendship with Leonard and Howard was still superficial. Their friendship had started just over 12 days ago. They were a well-established duo, and he was the new friend who still hadn't fully fit in. When it came to choosing groups, being left out was almost inevitable. In this class, Andrew didn't have any other friends besides Leonard and Howard. As he looked around, searching for options, his eyes landed on Pipa, who was already watching him with an arched eyebrow. His relationship with Pipa had improved in the past few days. They were now programming partners who helped each other, although he was the only one getting help from the smart and perfectionist girl, a quality he had noticed in the past days. She didn't hesitate to point out flaws in his code with surgical precision. Sometimes, Her tone could seem slightly intrusive, but not because she wanted to be condescending or boastful. It was just her way of being, direct and determined to help. For someone who didn't know her, her enthusiasm for correcting could come off as arrogance, but Andrew had already learned there was no ill intention behind her words. Looks like we're the only ones without a group partners? Pipa asked directly. Yeah, sure, partners, Andrew said with a somewhat relieved smile, happy not to be left alone. Plus, it's good to have someone smart as a partner. Although I warn you that I'm not a genius at this like you, Andrew added. Pipa rolled her eyes with a funny smile. Oh, please. I've only corrected you a couple of times. Only a couple of times, thought Andrew, but he said nothing. She even corrected the spelling mistakes in his notes if she happened to see any. Professor Smith paired up each student with their partner and then explained the main points of the project before the class ended. We need to decide what kind of functional app we'll make, Pipa commented while meticulously organizing her notes on the desk. Her movements were precise, as if each sheet had an exact place. The professor gave us time until Monday to come up with a basic idea. It's not much, but enough to come up with something solid, though not final, she added. I have practice now, and tomorrow is the first game, Andrew said, looking thoughtful. He needed to find a slot in his schedule, maybe on Saturday or Sunday. Pipa watched him for a few seconds. We'll decide tomorrow, she said finally, surprising Andrew. He had expected her to insist on solving it right away, true to her perfectionist nature. Aren't you going to insist we do it now? Andrew asked, half joking. I can be reasonable, Pipa replied with a slight shrug, as if it were obvious. Although you might not believe it, I understand that not everyone's priorities revolve around programming. Wow, is that empathy? Andrew joked as he packed up his things. Call it whatever you want. But don't take advantage of it, Pipa replied with a half smile. I'll only be lenient because tomorrow is your first game, and from what I can see, the whole school is excited. But don't think I'll forget about the project, she added. I knew there was a catch, Andrew said, chuckling under his breath. Consider this a patience loan. But if you don't start contributing after the game, I won't hesitate to talk to the professor, Pipa said, pointing at him with her pen. Got it, boss, Andrew replied, raising his hands in surrender as they walked toward the classroom door. Pipa rolled her eyes but couldn't help smiling. See you tomorrow. And good luck with the game. Andrew watched her leave. He wanted to ask if she was going to watch the game, but there was no time. I hope she goes, although I'll probably play on the bench, he thought, shaking his head, as he headed off to training. Chapter 27, 1000 subscribers. The day of the game arrived. They were facing the Glendale Hawks, a team from another district, so it was a friendly match. Despite being a friendly, there was a lot of buzz and excitement during the school day, as it was still the first game, and everyone had high hopes for the team this year. Plus, they would be playing at home. During the school day, most of the conversations were about the game, with students organizing plans to watch it with friends, guessing by how many points they would win, and especially debating who would be the starting quarterback for today's game, Andrew, the new quarterback who had just arrived from middle school, or Jason, the starting quarterback for the past 2 years. Most people were in favor of Jason and his experienced teammates taking the starting positions since they had been on the team longer and performed well last year. However, for Andrew, almost making the playoffs wasn't good enough. To him, that was mediocre performance. After classes, Andrew and his friends headed to practice. However, it wasn't a full regular practice session. The training focused more on strategy and was lighter, so it didn't last very long. Once it ended, they had a 2-hour break before the game. Andrew left the locker room with Reggie, Archie, Kevin, Steve, and other teammates from his grade who had been on the same middle school team. Naturally, the conversation revolved around the game. It's ridiculous that I'm not starting. The coach is blind. Obviously, he's siding with the seniors, but we all know we're better, Reggie commented with a scowl. Don't let the coach or the seniors hear you say that, or you'll spend even more time on the bench, Reggie, said Kevin with a slight smile. The others laughed, but Reggie gritted his teeth, clearly annoyed. He wasn't known for being the most patient in the group. Kevin, you lucky bastard. You're not complaining because you'll be starting. Guard has never been such a competitive position. It was easy to win, Kevin said, shrugging. The offensive guard's job is to protect the quarterback or open paths for the running backs. There are 2 starting guard positions. Kevin is tall and burly, much more so than Andrew and the others. His build is ideal for becoming an offensive or even defensive guard, although his speed is his weak point. The school's football team wasn't exactly known for having an outstanding offensive line. From the start, Jason had seen Kevin as a valuable asset. Having someone like him on the line meant he'd have at least decent protection on the field, something crucial for executing plays successfully. "Stop complaining, Reggie," Steve chimed in with a mocking smile. "Hit the weights more and become a guard. It'll be easier for you to start there than taking the spot from Jason's friend." The laughter that erupted from the others lightened the mood. In another group of rookies, a situation like this where the seniors dominated the starting spots might have caused nervousness or resentment. However, this group didn't seem upset. There was an almost palpable confidence among them, a certainty that their time would come sooner rather than later. And the main reason for that confidence was Andrew. It wasn't just because of his natural talent as a quarterback but also because of the impact he had on everyone around him. Training with him wasn't easy. He was demanding, competitive, and had an innate ability to read the game and find ways to improve, both individually and as a team. That's why, even though some like Reggie voiced their frustration, most of the group stayed calm. "Shut up, Steve. You don't even know what it's like to compete for a position. You're just another backup," Reggie shot back. "And what are you?" Steve replied, laughing even harder. "I'll get a starting spot before you do," Steve added, his smile widening. Reggie was ready to fire back another retort, but Kevin stepped in, trying to defuse the situation. "Enough, guys. This isn't a competition between us. It's against the seniors. Remember? They're the ones holding the starting spots." "TCH, fine. I've got an idea for you, Kevin. Don't protect that idiot Jason. Let him get tackled. If they win this friendly game, it'll just give the coach more reasons to keep them as starters," Reggie said, shifting his focus. Not only would he curse them, but he'd also try to sabotage them. Kevin looked visibly uncomfortable. He knew Reggie was being impulsive, but he didn't want to get caught up in a mess. The others watched, waiting for a response, but Kevin didn't know what to say. He didn't want to do anything that might jeopardize his position on the team or his relationship with Jason, but he also didn't want to lose face with the group. Unsure how to respond, Kevin glanced toward Andrew, and everyone followed his gaze. If Andrew told him to sabotage Jason, Kevin wouldn't think twice. After all, if they lost the friendly game, the coach might reconsider the starting positions, making it harder for the seniors to keep their spots. Reggie's idea, though venomous and ethically questionable, didn't sound entirely far-fetched. After all, it was just a friendly game, right? And sabotage, though dishonest, wouldn't change much in the grand scheme of things. "We're not doing that," Andrew said, speaking for the first time. "Sabotaging him just to get a starting spot isn't the way. If anyone finds out what we did, it'll backfire and make earning starting positions even harder." Kevin felt relieved. The others nodded, instantly accepting Andrew's decision. Reggie didn't look happy but stayed quiet. He knew there was no winning an argument against Andrew. As they turned a corner in the hallway, Andrew spotted Leonard and Howard leaning against the wall, speaking in low voices. Their eyes met, and Andrew knew it wasn't a coincidence they were there. "Go ahead without me. See you at the game," Andrew said, trying to keep his tone casual. "What's going on?" Kevin asked, and the others looked at Andrew, confused. The group had a tradition. Before Friday night games, they always went to a restaurant together to pass the time before heading to the game. It was a ritual they'd kept since their second year of middle school. "I have to see Veronica," Andrew replied with the first excuse that came to mind. A clear lie, but no one knew he was now friends with Leonard and Howard or his interest in video games, geek culture, and so on. "Oh, it's that," Archie said with a knowing grin, and the others gave Andrew teasing smiles. "Are you going to give her kisses before the game?" Steve teased, mimicking kissing an imaginary person, and everyone burst out laughing. "Get lost, or I'll double your training next week," Andrew exclaimed, and they all started running away, still laughing. If it had been a game where everyone was starting, they might have complained more, but since it was just a friendly match and only Kevin was a starter, skipping the ritual this time wasn't a big deal. Once everyone was out of sight, Andrew approached Howard and Leonard, who had gone unnoticed, a skill they had perfected over their years in middle school. "What's up?" Andrew asked. "We finally found you," Howard said, acting nervous for some reason Andrew couldn't quite understand. "Is something wrong?" "No, no. The opposite," Leonard replied, holding out his phone, a 3G iPhone, for Andrew to see. Andrew looked at the phone screen with curiosity. It was open to the YouTube app, specifically his own channel. The first thing that caught his attention, almost instinctively, was the subscriber count. There were no longer 3 digits he'd hit 4. The number read, 1001 subscribers. 1,000 subscribers! Andrew exclaimed enthusiastically, grabbing Leonard's phone to look at it more closely. "Yeah, finally hit 4 digits, baby!" Howard cheered, raising his fist in triumph, as if it were his own YouTube channel. "The last video hasn't even been up for 24 hours, and it's already getting a ton of views. It's on track to become your most viewed video, and you've gained over 100 subscribers in just 16 hours, Leonard said with a smile. "That's great. We need to celebrate," Andrew said, thrilled by the success of his channel. In less than 2 weeks, he had broken the 1,000 subscriber milestone, a significant achievement for him. If things kept progressing at this rate, he'd likely qualify for the YouTube Partner Program, YPP, which allows creators to monetize their videos through ads. While joining the program required meeting certain thresholds like subscriber count, watch hours, and content quality, it wasn't an easy feat. Although monetization wasn't his primary goal, being accepted into the YPP would validate that he was on the right track. It would mean YouTube recognized him as a creator with potential. And let's face it, earning some money wouldn't hurt. He could buy more video games, action figures, and similar things. "Yeah, let's celebrate. Boys' night at your place tonight," Howard declared, excited by Andrew's suggestion. He and Leonard had a blast the last time they hung out at Andrew's house and were eager to do it again. "Not tonight," Andrew said, and Leonard and Howard's enthusiasm immediately dampened at his refusal. After Friday night games, the team always gathered at someone's house to celebrate or, if they lost, to console each other, although losing was rare. It was another tradition Andrew took part in. It was the one time he stepped out of his room instead of staying cooped up, playing video games or something similar. For his friends and teammates, having Andrew there was important. It was their way of bonding with him, a night he never repeated in other social gatherings or parties. He had already broken the tradition of eating together at a restaurant before the game, he couldn't break another one now. "Right, there's the game," Leonard said, almost forgetting about that important event at school, though it didn't mean much to him. "Oh yeah. I almost forgot," Howard added, realizing Andrew probably had plans with his teammates after the game. "How about Saturday? We could hit the comic store at the mall, rent some movies, or head to the arcade, and then hang out at your place," Howard suggested. "That's a great plan," Andrew thought, genuinely excited at the idea of visiting a comic store with friends, something he'd never done before. The downside was that he already had plans for Saturday afternoon. "I've got a date with Veronica," Andrew admitted, a hint of reluctance in his voice. "Are you still with her?" Leonard asked, sounding slightly sympathetic, as he could tell Andrew wasn't enjoying the forced relationship. "Why do I hear pity in your tone?" Howard asked, glaring at Leonard. If any girl had ever agreed to date him, even out of pity, he'd be over the moon. He could die happy. "Yeah. I'll deal with it soon. But I could cancel on her. My dad asked me to go with him to an event at my sister's daycare, a special event or something like that. I told him I couldn't because of the date with Veronica," Andrew said, now considering a new plan. He would cancel on Veronica, saying he had to attend an important event for his baby sister. She couldn't get mad at him, it was about his little sister, after all. But instead, he'd visit the comic store with Leonard and Howard. "Are you sure? What if she finds out?" "Even if your dad finds out, it'll be bad," Leonard said, sounding a bit unsure. "Nothing will happen. We'll be discreet," Andrew replied, brushing off the concern with a dismissive gesture. Finally, he would get to visit a comic store with friends. He wasn't going to miss out on this for a fake date with his girlfriend or a daycare event for his little sister. He played with Lily every day after practice, their bond didn't hinge on attending one event. Visiting a comic store with friends who shared his interests would be amazing. "Yeah, Leonard, nothing bad will happen," Howard chimed in, eager to visit the comic store with Andrew and show all the nerds there that he had a cool friend. What could possibly go wrong? Chapter 28, First Match. At 7:20 p.m., the football field at Palisades High School, Andrew's school, was already filling up. The field had a capacity of about 500 people. Andrew's entire family had already arrived, his grandfather with Gloria and Manny, Claire and Phil with Haley, Alex and Luke, and Mitchell and Cameron. Also present were Andrew's neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, Jacob and Bethany. Both teams had been on the field for a few minutes, warming up, as the game was set to begin at 7:30. Before the game started, there was an opening ceremony to welcome the start of the sports season, even though this match was just a friendly. The cheerleaders performed a mini-show alongside the team mascot and the school band. "It is unbelievable that the bald coach does not start Andrew," Claire commented, crossing her arms with a slight frown. "The school is unprofessional for letting a relative coach," Jay added, also frowning and with his arms crossed. "That's because this school doesn't have a competitive football program," said Mr. Jacob, looking disdainfully at the coach on the field. "Andrew should have accepted the offer from Harvard Westlake School. They gave him a scholarship and offered him a spot on their team. Why didn't he take it?" Jacob asked, looking at Mitchell and Cam, who didn't seem too happy either. Harvard Westlake School is a private school in Los Angeles with an elite sports program. At that school, they don't allow relatives to coach, as favoritism is more likely. He turned down that offer for his friends, Mitchell replied with a strange expression. That was a lie. The real reason Andrew had given them for not attending that private, elite sports school was entirely different. He had said, with a serious look and a touch of arrogance in his tone, that he didn't want to be in a place where everything was too easy. It wouldn't be fun. "I want a real challenge, something that truly makes me work for victory," he had said. He valued his friendships, but that wasn't the main reason he rejected the private school. He needed a challenge in this new life. In his past life, he had attended a school with an elite football program, though it wasn't private. His teammates were elites and prodigies at his level. He didn't want to repeat the same path, as it would be easier in this life given that his abilities were superior. Mitchell and Cameron didn't share this reasoning because they didn't want Andrew to come across as an arrogant kid who didn't appreciate opportunities. In the end, they settled for the friends group excuse. This version sounded more epic and self-sacrificing, as if he had chosen to stay close to his people. If his dream is to go pro, he needs to stop worrying about those things, Jay said, watching the field. What really matters is being on a team that's at your level, one that pushes you to be better. If you have the talent, why waste it at a second-rate school? Decisions like that can cost you dearly. Jay genuinely believed his grandson had a strong chance of making it to the NFL, a dream he himself had once held but hadn't achieved due to a lack of talent. To him, Andrew was wasting his potential by staying at a school that wouldn't challenge him enough. Mitchell and Cameron exchanged an uncomfortable glance. The excuse about friends was just a facade they had created. "If I were you, I would have forced him to go to Harvard Westlake." "You can't waste an opportunity like that," Jay added, looking at Mitchell, clearly challenging his parenting methods. He wouldn't have been so soft. "Don't tell me how to raise my son," Mitchell said, frowning. The atmosphere around the family grew tense. "Dad, enough!" Claire exclaimed, trying to diffuse the tension. "Your days of being a father are over," she added. "Hey, Manny is his new son. His time as a father isn't over," Gloria chimed in, wanting Jay to be a better father than her previous husband, Javier Delgado. Manny wasn't paying attention to the family argument. He was focused on the beautiful cheerleaders, particularly a girl with straight blonde hair who seemed to be the leader. "I'm going to talk to the coach. I'll tell him I'm joining the cheer squad. I'll become the leader. I'll gain power within the team and make sure there's no favoritism. If I see any sign of injustice, I'll report it immediately. This is serious business, folks," Phil said enthusiastically, clenching his fist. He wasn't going to let any injustices slide. He would have to dust off his old cheerleading leader uniform. "Absolutely not. You're a 40-year-old adult. Are you seriously planning to practice with teenage girls in revealing uniforms? Do you think that won't cause any problems? Don't even think about it." Claire immediately scolded him. "Well, if they need help with flips or stunts, I'm ready," Phil said, completely oblivious to the potential issues that could arise. While the discussion continued, Haley slipped away to meet with Dylan. The game was about to start, and Andrew, sitting on the bench and watching the field, had no idea about the family argument. The game began with the home team on offense. Time passed as the crowd enthusiastically cheered on their team to remind the visitors that they weren't at home. It was a very close game. Andrew and his friends watched from the bench throughout all 4 quarters. At no point did the coach send them onto the field. He only made substitutions with other senior players on the bench to replace the tired ones and try out different strategies. The final 12-minute quarter ended when the referee blew the whistle. The score was 24-21 in favor of Palisades High School. The parents, family members, school staff, and students who came to watch the game were happy that the team had won. "My butt hurts," Steve complained as he got up from the bench. Andrew and the others also stood up and stretched. "This sucks," Reggie murmured, watching the starting team celebrate as if they had won the state championship. They saw how Jason kissed his cheerleader girlfriend passionately, as if it had been the most epic game in history, when they had won by a narrow margin and it wasn't even a game that counted for the season. "Don't worry, we'll be on the field soon if we perform better in practice," Archie said, although he didn't sound very sure. Now that the team had won the first game, the coach wouldn't receive complaints and wouldn't want to change his strategy for the next game. The parents and the school wouldn't complain if there were good results, so they could continue to be on the bench in the future. "The season games won't be as easy as this one. It's only a matter of time before they lose," said Andrew. He had seen the coach's mediocre tactics and the quality of the seniors. They had no future of winning this season or making it to the playoffs. Many seniors even showed up late to practice, and the coach acted as if he were blind, not punishing the indiscipline, nor pushing them to their limits during practice. "Why the long faces, boys? Be happy to be on the winning team," said one of the seniors who started in the game with an unpleasant laugh. His friends, who followed him, laughed. Luckily, they went on their way, or Reggie might have started a fight. With the game over, Andrew and the others went to the locker room to change, before the seniors arrived. They had to take advantage of the stupid celebration they were having as if they had won something important. Then they headed to Archie's house where the Friday night post-game gathering would be held. Before leaving in Archie's dad's truck, Andrew said goodbye to his family. His parents already knew that he always hung out with his friends on Friday nights, and they would pick him up later. When he went to meet up with Archie and the others, he ran into Pipa, or rather, she intercepted him. "Finally, I found you," said Pipa, a little out of breath. It wasn't easy to find him with 500 people walking around. Plus, he wasn't wearing the team uniform anymore, which made him a little harder to spot. "Oh, you came to watch the game," Andrew commented. He had tried to spot Pipa in the stands, but there were too many people. "Yeah, I was kind of forced to by my friends and family," Pipa sighed. She would have been better off at home studying, or at one of her friends' houses without the crowd and all the excitement over a simple friendly game. "I was surprised to see you on the bench the whole game." "I wasn't the only one. Many people talked more about that than the game. The big talented quarterback not stepping onto the field for even a minute. Nobody expected that. Did you show up late to practice, and that's why they benched you the whole game?" she added with a slight smile. "No, I didn't show up late to practice. I'm just on the bench because of a decision by the coach," Andrew replied, his tone less enthusiastic than usual. Although he knew he would soon be the starter and that his level was above Jason's, he didn't like missing a game, no matter how friendly it was. He wanted to play every game. "Oh, sorry. I was just joking, you know, with all the rumors about you and the 2 championships you won. I didn't mean to say I don't think you're capable, just that sometimes I'm a little clumsy with what I say," Pipa said, starting to apologize, her voice speeding up as if she were trying to make her words come out as quickly as possible to cover the awkward moment she herself had created. Andrew watched her. He wasn't upset by her earlier comment. He knew she was just joking to lighten the mood, although her comment could be misinterpreted. "I didn't mean to make you feel bad or anything like that, really," Pipa finally said, looking down a bit embarrassed by how much and how fast she had spoken. "I know, Pipa. It's fine. You'll see me on the field soon," Andrew said with a smile to reassure her and let her know he wasn't angry. "Great," Pipa murmured, relieved. "By the way, call me Pip," she added, lifting her head and giving him a small smile. "All right, Pip," Andrew replied with a smile. Then, he thought for a moment before adding, "I'd tell you to call me by a nickname, but the only one I have is Andy, and well, it's a bit childish." "Then I'll call you Andy," Pipa said with a playful smile. Didn't you hear the part where I said it's childish? Andrew asked. It's not that bad. It's like the kid who owns the toys in Toy Story, right? Pippa said, feeling the conversation had taken a more comfortable turn. Well, if you say so, then it's Andy for you. Why were you looking for me? To clarify the details about the project. We need to decide what functional program we're going to do. We have to bring something by Monday, at least a rough idea, Pippa said without much ceremony. Was the patience loan over the moment the game ended? Andrew asked, amused by how seriously and quickly Pippa approached the work. Yeah, I don't like leaving things until the last minute, Pippa responded seriously. I thought we could catch up on Saturday or Sunday. I'm free both afternoons. How about you? Pippa asked. I can't on Saturday. Sunday will work, Andrew said. Why not Saturday? Pippa asked, wanting to work 2 afternoons on the project and bring the professor something well thought out and advanced. I have an event at my sister's daycare, Andrew replied, trying to keep a poker face. I didn't know he had a sister. Pippa thought, a little surprised. There were many rumors about Andrew, that his parents were gay and that he was adopted. That much was known, but not that he had a sister. They must have adopted her recently, Pip concluded. All right, Sunday it is. I'll give you my number so we can finalize the details, Pippa said, pulling out her phone from her pocket. I'll see you on Sunday then, boss, Andrew said after jotting down Pip's number on his phone. See you, Andy, Pippa said, using his nickname with a teasing smile. And good luck with your new little sister's event, she added and walked away from Andrew. New little sister? How does she know she's new? Andrew thought, but didn't give it much more attention. Andrew then met up with his friends to head to Archie's house. Chapter 29, Discovered by Everyone. Author's note. I thought Andrew's reason for staying with his current team was easy to understand, but apparently not. Andrew already attended an elite high school in his past life. He knows exactly what they offer and how they work. He was the leader of an elite team, won a state championship, and was the best teenage quarterback in the state. He transmigrated into the body of a 5-year-old and trained for 10 more years. Combined with his prior experience, he's an even better player now. Even his genetics are superior. Following the same path as before would be monotonous and boring. Plus, the opportunity for growth would be minimal since he already played at that level in his previous life. Instead, taking on the challenge of carrying an average team on his shoulders and trying to lead them to the top is far more exciting and pushes him to improve even further. If he achieves this feat, not only will all the top sports universities want to recruit him instantly, but he will also become a high school legend, far greater than he would by simply winning with an elite team. I didn't think I'd have to explain this because it seemed pretty obvious, but well, I guess not everyone can connect the most obvious dots. On Saturday afternoon, Andrew went to the mall with Leonard and Howard. The night before, at Archie's house, he had told Veronica to cancel their date. At first, Veronica was upset about it, but when Andrew explained the reason, she didn't get mad. It would have been too heartless to get angry when he was going to an event for his new baby sister. She wanted to reschedule the date for Sunday, but Andrew told her he couldn't make it then either because he had an important programming project to work on. He didn't mention that his partner for the project was a girl, knowing it would only create unnecessary problems he wanted to avoid. I hope I can buy the World War Hulk comic with the David Finch cover, Howard said, rubbing his hands together and wondering if he'd get lucky. Currently, Howard, Leonard, and Andrew were in the mall, riding the escalator on their way to the comic book store. You're overly hopeful. Variant covers are limited editions and will soon become collectibles. A regular store in a mall won't carry them, Leonard said, shaking his head. Hope is the last thing you lose, Howard replied, undeterred by his friend's pessimism. You use that saying for everything, even with girls. You always try to flirt and fail, Leonard said with a slight, teasing smile. At least I try, unlike you, coward. You just stay in your comfort zone, waiting for a girl to fall from the sky, Howard retorted with a smirk. Howard and Leonard began arguing. As the escalator ride ended, they started walking toward the comic book store. Andrew's silence made them stop their bickering and look at him. Why aren't you saying anything? Howard asked. It was unusual for the typically outgoing and confident Andrew to stay quiet and appear more pensive than usual. What's with the smile? It's like this is your first time visiting a comic book store, Leonard said, casting a curious glance at him. He had noticed Andrew's smile, a smile that seemed almost nervous. For the first time I will visit the comic book store with friends and without a hood, Andrew replied. He had decided to stop hiding his love for geeky things. At first, he thought he kept it a secret simply because there was no need for his football teammates to know about that hobby. Telling them wouldn't add anything since he wouldn't discuss such topics with them anyway. But he realized there was another reason. He had done it in this life and his past life. Deep down, he feared being seen as weird since there was an incompatibility between the image of a popular athlete and his geeky interests. He was aware of his popularity, and if that ever came to light, it would just be one more rumor added to the ones already circulating about him. And he wasn't a big fan of rumors about himself, whether good or bad. But no more. Hiding it would only make things harder in the future, and he didn't care about the opinions of strangers. His family already knew about his interests, and now his two new friends, Howard and Leonard, knew too, and he was having a lot of fun with them. If he kept hiding it, he might push Leonard and Howard away, as they would see him as embarrassed by his hobby and a fake person. Congratulations, popular kid. But I'm telling you, this time you should wear a hood and some sunglasses, Howard said, shaking his head. Yeah, the one time you lie to your parents and your girlfriend is when you leave your face uncovered. You could get caught, Leonard said, a little worried about the situation. Leonard was happy Andrew had agreed to hang out with the two of them, but getting recognized wouldn't be good for him. Moreover, they didn't know Andrew had lied to someone else too, Pipa. The risk of being discovered had increased. Relax, nothing will happen. It's Saturday, the mall is packed, Andrew said with a calm, faint smile. So what? That just means there's a higher chance your girlfriend is here with her friends, Howard argued, air quoting the word girlfriend. If there's a crowd, it's harder to be recognized. Besides, I asked Haley if she had any plans with her friends, and she said no. So, Veronica won't be here, and my parents are at the daycare event. Everything is under control, Andrew said. Haley was a close friend of Veronica. As for Pipa, she had mentioned she liked staying home or spending time at her friends' houses. She didn't seem to enjoy crowds or be the type to spend a Saturday at the mall shopping for clothes. If you say so. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad if Veronica found you here, Leonard said with a thoughtful look. Oh, that's true. You didn't know how to break up with her. If she catches you here and realizes you lied to her, maybe she'll dump you or at least it'll add a point toward a future breakup, Howard said, nodding as if it were a solid plan. Shut up, we're here, said Andrew, pushing the glass door open and stepping into the comic book store. The store was tucked away in a distant corner of the mall's second floor, far from the more popular shops, as if meant for outcasts. Andrew took a deep breath as he entered, closing his eyes for a moment. The smell of fresh comics was addictive. If you were a regular nerd, I'd say what you just did was disgusting, but your looks save you, Howard said, giving Andrew a strange look. Was that a gay insinuation, Howard? Andrew asked, raising an eyebrow. Leonard burst out laughing. Shut up, Howard huffed, punching Andrew on the shoulder, something he immediately regretted. It felt like punching something really solid, and his fist started aching. The three of them spread out across the store, exploring enthusiastically. Andrew browsed through the comics, flipping through covers of Spider-Man and Avengers. Leonard and Howard stuck to DC Comics. They soon started debating which ones to buy, as their limited budgets meant they had to choose wisely. Andrew's appearance caught the attention of most people in the store. He was the opposite of the nerd stereotype, tall, athletic, and exuding confidence in his movements and speech. Between laughs, jokes, and debates, time flew by. They left the store, each with a comic tucked under their arm. This is fun, Andrew thought. It was the first time he had visited a comic book store with friends. They sat at a table in a cafe to grab something to drink and chat a bit more. Andrew needed to be home by around 5:30 p.m. He had arrived at the mall at 3. Mitchell and Cameron were attending Lily's event from 3 to 4. They thought Andrew was on a date with Veronica, and if his date lasted less than an hour, they'd know something was up, especially since they had noticed that Veronica tended to keep their son busy on dates for over 2 hours. His alibi had to be flawless. After enjoying their drinks and snacks, Howard and Leonard got up to use the bathroom. Andrew stayed behind at the table, gazing out the window at the bustling mall. It's almost 5. If I head back now, everything will be fine, Andrew thought with a faint smile. Nothing had gone wrong. He hadn't been discovered by anyone and had spent a pleasant afternoon talking about comics and nerdy stuff. Enjoying your coffee? A feminine voice asked, and the faint smile vanished from Andrew's face. Slowly, he turned around and saw the face of a girl he recognized. Pip. Andrew murmured, looking at Pippa, who was smiling faintly as she rested her arm on the back of his chair. Hi, Andy, Pip greeted with a wider smile, holding back laughter at the nervous expression on Andrew's face. It was the first time she'd seen him like this. When did you get here? Andrew asked, trying to act normal again. When you guys were talking about who would win, the Avengers or the Justice League, Pippa replied. Andrew's expression darkened. That had been 30 minutes ago, a conversation that had gone on far too long. Oh. You know, after my sister's event, I came to relax and grab a coffee with friends. Andrew said, trying to cover up his lie. You're a terrible liar, Pippa thought, noting Andrew's unnatural expression and tone. You told me in a message that your sister's event was at 3, and at that exact time, I saw you walking into the comic book store. My family has had me stuck here for a while, Pippa said, sighing in exasperation. Andrew wanted to slap himself. The night before, after getting Pippa's number, he couldn't resist texting her, and they chatted a bit. To make his lie more believable, he had specified the exact time of Lily's event. Are you mad? Andrew asked, noticing that Pippa's expression remained calm. There was no frown or sign of anger. She just looked at him serenely while sipping her shake. No, Pippa replied, lowering her cup and looking at him directly with a slight smile. Andrew frowned in confusion. Why wasn't she angry? He had lied blatantly and been caught. The reason, though she wouldn't share it with Andrew, was that she had overheard his conversation about comics and other geeky things. She had seen Andrew chatting with Leonard and Howard a bit during programming class but didn't think they were that close. It surprised her that a popular athlete like Andrew had such a geeky hobby and two friends who didn't seem like they'd fit with him at all. She liked seeing that there was more to Andrew than met the eye. Most athletes she'd known were jerks or idiots with egos the size of mountains. Tomorrow, we're doing the project without fail, okay? Pippa said in a tone that left no room for negotiation, though her expression remained friendly. Yeah, sure, we already agreed on that, Andrew replied. Just as he finished speaking, 3 figures approached the table, interrupting their conversation. The bill is paid. We can head home now, said a man with a smile, looking at Pip. You've fulfilled your family outing quota, sweetheart. You can go back to your room and continue with your studies, added a middle-aged woman with hair and eyes similar to Pip's. Thanks, Mom, for the great privilege of returning to my own room, Pip said in a resigned tone. At that moment, the woman noticed Andrew sitting at the nearby table. Oh, and who's this? A friend? She asked. Hi, I'm Andrew. I'm working with Pippa on a school project, he said, standing up out of courtesy. He extended his hand firmly toward the man, who returned the handshake with a smile. Oh, Andrew! Pip's mother exclaimed, recognizing the name. You're the school team's quarterback, right? We've seen your games back in middle school. It's a pleasure to meet you, Andrew replied modestly. Josh never misses a game. You're a great quarterback, said the man, gesturing to a boy hiding behind Pip's mother. The boy looked at Andrew shyly but with evident admiration. Oh, thank you. I'm just a backup now, Andrew said, scratching the back of his neck, clearly not used to receiving compliments. And the project you're working on? Do you have everything planned out? Pip's mother asked. Yes, Mom. We're working on it tomorrow, Pip quickly interjected, as if trying to prevent the conversation from going too far. Why don't you come to our house to work on it? We have a quiet room where you can concentrate, so you don't have to worry about finding a place to meet, Pip's mother suggested. Pip placed a hand on her forehead, clearly embarrassed by her mother's meddling, but she didn't contradict her. In fact, it was exactly what she had been planning to suggest to Andrew. If it's okay with Pippa, I can come, Andrew said. Pip's mother smiled, satisfied. Perfect. We'll see you then. Pip, do you want to tell him what time? Pip sighed, resigned but without protesting. All right. Tomorrow at 4. Does that work for you, Andrew? Yeah, that works perfectly, Andrew replied. Pip and her family, with the bill paid, said goodbye to Andrew and left the cafe. Phew, luckily, she didn't get mad, Andrew thought with relief. At that moment, Leonard and Howard arrived. They each paid for their orders and began the journey back to Andrew's house to celebrate hitting 1,000 subscribers, a number now nearing 1,100. As they descended the escalator, Andrew's mind wandered to the unexpected encounter with Pipa. Out of the corner of his eye, he spotted a familiar head of hair and turned toward the upward-moving escalator. There was Veronica. She sensed someone looking at her and turned her gaze toward him. Their eyes met. Time seemed to stop for a second. They were moving in opposite directions, one down, the other up, but the eye contact remained unbroken. Veronica's expression was a mix of surprise, anger, and something Andrew didn't want to decipher at that moment. Her eyes seemed to ask, "What are you doing here?" Howard, noticing the change in Andrew's face, followed his line of sight. His reaction was immediate. "Oh no, that's Veronica, isn't it? Wasn't she not supposed to be here?" he murmured, his tone a mix of amusement and concern. Andrew noticed that Veronica wasn't with her usual group of friends, Haley and 2 other girls. Instead, she was with the cheerleading squad. "Just run," Andrew said impulsively, making a quick, practical decision. He broke eye contact with Veronica and began bounding down the escalator 2 steps at a time, leaving Leonard and Howard staring after him in disbelief. "Andrew!" Veronica's shout echoed through the mall corridor. Even as the distance between them grew, her voice was loud enough to catch the attention of everyone nearby. Hearing her yell, Leonard and Howard started running after Andrew. Howard, laughing under his breath, tripped as he tried to keep up. "This is the best thing that's happened to me all week. Do you think she's going to chase you down like the TX in Terminator 3? Stop talking, Howard. If you keep spouting nonsense, you'll get winded and collapse here with your terrible fitness," Andrew snapped, his patience wearing thin. After a couple more minutes of running, Andrew, Howard, and Leonard finally escaped the danger zone, the mall. The fresh air outside was a relief, but neither Howard nor Leonard seemed in any shape to continue running. Andrew was breathing erratically, not from physical exhaustion, but from nerves. As he looked ahead, he found himself face to face with people he instantly recognized. A few meters away stood his parents, Mitchell and Cam, with Lily in her stroller. Both of them looked at him with a mix of surprise and confusion, clearly sensing that something was off when they saw Leonard and Howard standing next to him. "Why do I have to meet everyone today?" Andrew thought in exasperation. It felt like the universe was conspiring against him, as if everything was aligning to expose his lie. Chapter 30, Pipa's House. On Sunday, 10 minutes before 4 o'clock, Andrew left his house heading to Pip's house to work on their programming project. Their houses weren't far apart. With just 10 minutes of moderate walking, Andrew should arrive on time. As Andrew walked, he thought about the events of the previous day. His lie had been discovered by all the people who shouldn't have found out: Pipa, his parents, and Veronica. Of the 3, Veronica was the one who took it the worst. As for Pipa, she didn't seem to care despite her perfectionist tendencies. Who knows why? And his parents seemed almost delighted to find out Andrew had lied. They didn't even punish him. Howard and Leonard were able to spend the night as planned. They even all returned home together in Mitchell and Cam's car along with Lily. The reason for Mitchell and Cameron's excitement was that Andrew had lied for the first time like a normal teenager. That's why they were happy, because his discipline and good behavior were sometimes far too extreme. With Veronica, he had a tedious phone conversation. He needed to end this relationship as soon as possible. For this, he asked his cousin Haley, an expert in ending relationships, for help, and his shortest breakup holds the record at just 2 days. If Haley's advice didn't help, he would simply end the relationship without further ado. He had already tried hard enough to take care of Veronica's feelings so as not to reject her in front of everyone. Now he is the only one who is harmed, since Veronica only talks about herself in the conversations, which made him realize that she is very superficial. After finishing the task at Pip's house, he would head to his uncle's house to talk to her. Andrew stopped in front of a pretty, picturesque 2-story house. Seeing it matched the address Pip had given him, he walked to the door, rang the bell, and waited. Ding, dong. The moment he rang the bell, Andrew heard quick footsteps rushing toward the door and loud but happy barking. He instantly knew it was a dog scratching at the door, eager to meet the guest. "Barney, back! Don't scratch the door!" Pippa scolded, but the dog didn't seem to take her seriously and kept scratching the door until it was finally opened. The first thing Andrew saw was a golden retriever jumping at him with great force. Luckily, Andrew's strength was high enough that he wasn't pushed or knocked over by the enthusiastic dog. Easy, buddy, easy, Andrew said, petting the dog with a smile and laughing softly as the golden retriever's tongue licked his face. Always the same, Barney. Pippa said in a resigned tone, letting Barney give Andrew a proper welcome. Barney? Like the dinosaur? Andrew asked as Pippa invited him in. Yes, like the dinosaur. Pippa replied after a few seconds, debating whether or not to confirm. Seems like you're into kids' movies, Andrew teased with a slight smirk, remembering when Pippa had called him Andy, referencing Toy Story. And how do you know about Barney the dinosaur? Are you a secret fan? Pippa shot back playfully as they walked down the hall toward the living room. They hadn't even greeted each other formally. I know him because of my little sister. She's obsessed with that show, Andrew replied. Is your little sister real? Or is she just a convenient excuse to save you when you're in trouble? Pippa asked with a slight smile. Flesh and blood, and Vietnamese, Andrew answered without getting upset at Pippa's comment. After all, he had lied using his little sister as an excuse. Considering that everyone knew him well and nobody was aware his parents were adopting a baby, it was understandable for Lily's existence to be questioned. I don't know. If you want me to believe you, you'll have to show me proof or something, Pippa said, pretending to think. When I get back home, I'll send you a picture of her, Andrew replied, hoping to shake off the label of liar from his reputation. Fine, but you have to be in the photo. You can find plenty of pictures of Vietnamese babies online, Pippa said, and Andrew agreed, unable to argue with her logic. They arrived in the living room, and Pippa frowned slightly upon seeing her dad and little brother sitting on one of the couches. The living room was cozy, spacious, and filled with several sofas arranged around a coffee table, all facing a large television. On the coffee table were already Pippa's notes and her laptop, everything ready for them to get to work. I thought I was pretty clear a few minutes ago, Pippa remarked, shooting a sharp glare at her father, who was smiling from the couch as if he weren't doing anything wrong. Hi, Mr. Amobi. Hi, Josh, Andrew greeted with his usual enthusiasm, not understanding why Pippa was frowning. Pippa had been very clear in telling her father and brother that she and Andrew would be using the living room to work, no interruptions, no distractions, and absolutely no spectators. But there they were, her father, with that mischievous smile that exposed him as the nosiest person alive, and Josh, her 10-year-old brother, practically bouncing on the couch, unable to contain his excitement. Both of them were eager to meet the star quarterback who had been interviewed by a local news outlet, appeared on TV, and won 2 district championships in middle school. It didn't matter that the championships were at a school level, in their community, that was more than enough to make him a local legend. Besides, this was Los Angeles, with an enormous number of schools, making it no small feat to stand out. Hello, Andrew. Welcome to my home. Make yourself comfortable, and please, call me Victor, said the African-American man with a warm smile, completely ignoring his daughter's piercing glare. Pippa was not Victor's full-blooded daughter. Her father died when she was only 1 year old, so she has no memory of him. Victor is her mother's second marriage who is currently away from home, having met some old friends. As for Josh, he is the son of Victor and Pippa's mother. Despite this, Pippa considers Victor as her father, not as a stepfather, and both have a very close relationship, father and daughter. Andrew, always polite, smiled and nodded naturally. Thank you, Mr. A.M. I mean, Victor. It's a pleasure. Dad, Josh, what are you doing here? Pippa asked in a calm tone, though a vein of frustration was beginning to show on her temple. What? I didn't know I needed an invitation to sit in my own house, Victor replied with total cheekiness. I rewatched the video of that incredible pass in the final against the Venice Spartans. It was awesome. Josh blurted out, unable to contain his excitement any longer. He was even wearing a 49 ERS jersey. Oh, that was a good pass, Andrew said with a slight smile, recalling the game. It hadn't been a difficult match, but that final pass had gotten a lot of attention. It was the reason he'd been interviewed. A good pass? That was over 70 yards. That's elite high school quarterback stuff, and you were only in middle school. Victor exclaimed. A really good high school quarterback can typically throw passes between 60 and 70 yards with accuracy and power. That's the standard at high levels of competition. But exceeding 70 yards is exceptional, especially for a middle schooler. That's why everyone saw Andrew as having such a bright future. Although Andrew had read some comments on the video of his pass on YouTube saying it was luck and similar things, if they knew that throwing that pass hadn't even been a challenge for him, they'd lose their minds. I watched the game 5 times. Josh said enthusiastically, but just as he was about to continue, he was interrupted. Josh, enough, Pipa said. I told you, Andrew and I need to work. Remember that word? WORK. That means we don't need fans getting in the way, she added. They couldn't waste time, they needed to have a preliminary idea ready for tomorrow. Her father raised his hands in surrender, though his smile remained. Relax, Pip. We just came to say hello. It's not every day we have a future NFL star in the house, Victor said. It's a bit early to say I'll play in the NFL, Andrew replied, recalling the heart attack from his past life. If he hadn't died, he'd be playing in the NFL now, so he figured it was best not to tempt fate. But you will. Josh said with more confidence than Andrew himself, and we're talking about his future. You've said hello. Out, Pippa ordered. Come on, Josh. Let's give your sister and Andrew some space, Victor said, realizing he was pushing the limits. But, Dad. Josh protested, reluctant to leave. No buts. There'll be plenty of time to talk football in the future, Victor said, giving Pippa a subtle smile, one she noticed immediately. Perhaps her father noticed that she was more dressed up than usual. If you need a break or some inspiration, Josh and I will be in the other room watching the 95 game between the 49ers and Packers. I'm sure you'd love to see that historic game, Victor added, glancing at Andrew, who was tempted to rewatch that incredible match. Dad. Pippa growled, losing her patience and pointing toward the door. All right. We're leaving, Victor responded with a laugh, guiding Josh out of the living room. Finally, Pippa let out a sigh of relief and collapsed onto the couch across from Andrew. Sorry. Those two are huge football fans, Pippa said. Don't worry about it. Your brother seems like a good kid. If he knows that much, he's probably good at football, Andrew said with a soft laugh as he placed his backpack on the floor and pulled out his notebook. Chapter 31, A Video Game? All right, let's get started. Do you have any idea what kind of functional program we should create? Asked Pippa, opening her perfectly organized notebook, with every page carefully numbered and a column dedicated exclusively to jotting down ideas. I thought about it, but... Pippa paused and let out a frustrated sigh, lightly tapping the edge of her pencil against the table. Creativity isn't my strong suit. I prefer math and logic. So, to be honest, I'm completely lost when it comes to coming up with an original idea. For me, the important thing is that it works and meets the assignment's requirements. I see. Actually, I already have something in mind, Andrew said confidently. Oh? What are you thinking? Pippa asked, leaning forward. A video game, Andrew replied with a smile. A video game? Pippa repeated, raising an eyebrow as she set her pencil down on the table. I've seen the video games my little brother plays. They have incredible graphics and tons of things happening at once. We can't create something like that. She added. I understand why you'd think that, but I'm not talking about something as elaborate as those AAA games. What I have in mind is much simpler, something we can realistically achieve with the tools we have, Andrew said, laughing lightly. Replicating a AAA game would require a team of experts and a lot of money. So, what kind of video game? Pippa asked, tilting her head slightly, skeptical but interested. A simple game, like the ones you play on your phone, Andrew replied. I don't play anything on my phone, Pippa responded, earning a strange look from Andrew, who quickly pulled out his phone. Look, this is Block Breaker Deluxe 2. It's a game where you move a paddle to bounce a ball and destroy blocks. It's not complicated, but it's really addictive. The mechanics are simple, yet it can get challenging as the levels become harder, Andrew explained, leaning over so Pippa could see the screen. Pippa watched the game attentively as Andrew navigated the main menu tabs and started playing. He breezed through the early levels with ease. It doesn't seem that hard, Pippa commented at first, her arms crossed. Try it, Andrew said, handing her the phone. Pippa accepted. After a few minutes, she started to understand the challenge. The speed increased, the ball bounced at unpredictable angles, and bonuses appeared in hard-to-reach places. How am I supposed to catch that star without letting the ball fall? She exclaimed, frustrated but already hooked on the game. Andrew laughed. It's just a matter of practice and improving your reflexes. Without realizing it, nearly 20 minutes passed as they took turns, laughing every time the ball fell and marveling at the increasing difficulty of the levels. Island complete! Pipa exclaimed, raising her hands in a small gesture of triumph. Well done, you're improving really quickly, Andrew praised with a smile, glancing at her out of the corner of his eye. Both were sitting on the floor, legs crossed, backs leaning against the base of the sofa, their shoulders slightly touching. The coffee table in front of them held their notebooks, still blank. Well, it wasn't that hard, Pipa replied, though she couldn't help but smile as she looked at the score on the screen. It wasn't easy. You saved that ball at the last second, although, to be honest, I could have done it better, Andrew said with a playful smirk, crossing his arms and boasting a little. Pipa raised an eyebrow, turning her head toward him with a mix of disbelief and challenge. Oh, really? Andrew nodded, maintaining his confident expression and looking right back at her. Of course. I've got a natural talent for these things, probably on par with my athletic talent. Please, Pipa replied with a light laugh. You've played way more than me, so obviously you're better. But if I practiced more, I'm sure I'd beat you. Is that a challenge? Andrew asked, raising an eyebrow and giving her a slight grin. They stared at each other for a moment. Pipa suddenly realized how close their faces were, blinked, and shook her head as a faint blush colored her cheeks. She quickly straightened up and grabbed her notebook and pencil. Anyway, we should be working, not wasting time playing games, she said, trying to hide the nervous tone in her voice, which Andrew didn't seem to notice. Oh, right, Andrew said, glancing at the time on his phone. They had lost track of time. The darn game really was addictive. It's true that this game is simpler than the ones my brother plays, but the levels keep getting more complex, and none of it feels simple. It also has music for each level, and neither of us is a composer, Pipa said, switching back to work mode. That's true. This game has a lot going on, animations, special blocks, increasingly challenging levels. But the idea I have in mind for our project will be much simpler. No moving blocks or flashy music. Just a basic, addictive mechanic. Something like tapping to make a character go up and releasing to make it go down. It doesn't need incredible graphics, just precision and reflexes, which will make it really addictive, maybe even more than this game, Andrew said with a slight smile. Something like what we just played, but simpler? Pipa asked, raising an eyebrow. Exactly. A game that anyone can understand in seconds but keeps them hooked as they try again and again, Andrew replied. Explain more, Pipa said, jotting in her notebook, easy to understand game in seconds. Precision/reflexes. Tap to make the character go up, release to make it go down. My idea is for the main character to be a bird, using pixel art, Andrew explained, turning his notebook to show Pipa. I already drew an initial design. Here it is. Pipa leaned forward slightly to get a better look at the drawing. It was simple but charming. The bird had a rounded shape, a small orange triangular beak, and a pair of wings that seemed ready to flap. Did you draw this? Pipa asked, a bit surprised. She hadn't expected Andrew, the elite athlete of their school, to have an artistic side too. Yet. I'm not the best artist, but I think it works for what I want. It's simple, recognizable, and easy to animate, Andrew replied. The game Andrew wanted to replicate was Flappy Bird, a game that wouldn't be released until 2013. In other words, it was still more than 5 years away from being created by its original developer. In his past life, Andrew remembered playing this simple yet addictive mobile game. A delightful little bird navigating through pipes reminiscent of those in Mario Brothers. The only objective was to keep going through pipes until you lost. Then you'd start over, trying to beat your high score. As you progressed, the speed increased. Andrew wanted to replicate this game for one main reason: money. In his previous life, he had read an article stating that Flappy Bird, at its peak, generated around $50,000 per day in ad revenue and had over 50 million downloads. However, the original creator, for moral reasons, eventually decided to remove it from the Play Store. According to the creator, he disliked the addiction his game caused in people. Andrew didn't know if he could replicate that success, but he was going to try. It wouldn't take long to create the game if he worked with Pipa. Of course, he'd split the profits. As for the morality of stealing an idea that technically didn't exist yet, it wasn't something that kept him up at night. For him, it was more of an opportunity than an ethical dilemma. His previous life had taught him that money wasn't just necessary, it was essential for survival. After the death of his grandfather, who had been his only close family, Andrew was left alone. Some friends of his grandfather took him in, but the financial situation was always tight. Despite having a natural talent for football, Andrew had to work part-time to support himself and indulge in small pleasures. Who wouldn't benefit from $50,000 a day? Plus, he wouldn't have to dedicate his entire day to this project since the game is simple and it's a task given to him at school, so he has to spend time on it whether he wants to or not. He could try to create the game on his own, but his strength wasn't in programming, and he was just starting out in this world, so it was crucial to have someone as competent as Pipa by his side. Chapter 32, Nervousness. What about the obstacles? And the background? We can't let the bird fly in a void, asked Pip, stopping her gaze at the bird in the notebook. I was thinking of green pipes or something similar. They should appear randomly with spaces between them for the bird to fly through. That's the player's goal. As for the background, I was thinking of a blue sky with some pixelated clouds, Andrew replied, flipping to the next page of his notebook, where he had sketched the pipes and the sky, very simple drawings. I see. So, the player taps the screen to make the bird go up, and if they stop tapping, the bird goes down. The trick is to dodge the pipes, said Pippa, nodding as she quickly grasped the game's logic. Exactly. If the bird hits one of the pipes or the ground, you lose. There will always be a gap between the pipes for the bird to pass through, but that gap will keep changing position. For example, one pipe might have the gap very high, and the next one might be much lower. This way, the player will have to constantly adjust the height, Andrew explained. And as you progress, does it get harder? Asked Pippa, and Andrew nodded. The speed will gradually increase. The idea is that, even though it's a simple game, it has that addictive I want to beat my record factor. For that, we just need a counter to track how long you survive. The longer you dodge the pipes, the higher your score goes, Andrew added. A counter that's solely based on survival time? That sounds simple to implement, said Pippa, as if it were no challenge at all. It was a relief to have someone so competent on their team. So, there won't be levels as such, the game is infinite until you lose. We just need to make it endless once you hit play, said Pippa, resting a hand on her chin. Yes, and program the pipes to appear with gaps in different positions and randomly. That would make each game unique and not feel repetitive, said Andrew, looking at Pippa expectantly. We need to make sure the pipes aren't impossible to dodge. We can set certain ranges so that the gaps are always within a reasonable limit, Pippa said thoughtfully. Do you know how to do that? Andrew asked. Yes, it's just a bit more advanced than what we've covered so far. It won't be a problem, Pippa replied. Great. It's nice to work with someone so smart, Andrew said with a smile, causing Pippa to quickly look away for some reason. It's not that big a deal, Pippa said, avoiding eye contact. Andrew and Pippa spent a little over an hour discussing the organization and details of every aspect of the game. They defined the gameplay, the design of the pipes, the bird's behavior, and how they would divide the tasks. They didn't finalize every detail, but they now had something concrete, far more than just a preliminary idea, which was the professor's assignment. They were well ahead of schedule. This is impressive, Pippa said, looking at her notebook, filled with meticulous notes. This is more than enough to present tomorrow. In fact, I'm sure the professor will praise us, Pippa thought confidently. Yeah, we're pretty far along. Happy now, Miss Perfectionist? Andrew said with a slight smile as he packed up his things. He knew Pippa was a perfectionist and a good student, so being ahead in a subject was definitely a good thing. Perfectionist? Me? Pippa asked, slightly confused by the comment. Yes, I've noticed. Since we've known each other, I've seen how meticulous you are about everything you do. You even correct my spelling when we take notes in class, Andrew said with a smile. Well, I just like everything to be well done, Pippa replied, looking down, feeling a bit uncomfortable about being so particular about others' work. It's one thing to be a perfectionist about your own work, but wanting to do the same with others could come across as a bit meddlesome and, in some cases, even annoying. Sorry if I've corrected you too much since we met, Pippa added. It doesn't bother me. I actually like that about you, Andrew replied casually, zipping up his backpack. Do you like that about me? Pippa asked suddenly, stammering a little as she looked at him. Yes, Andrew replied, not noticing the intense look Pip was giving him. I think people with that kind of attitude toward things are the ones who really achieve great results, he added. He was the same way with his training and diet. He had to be to reach his dream. Hard work and talent. Pippa nodded slowly, a slight blush appearing on her cheeks. The quality I like about you is that you are kind to everyone, Pippa said, summoning her courage. Kind to everyone. Andrew repeated, looking at her. I'm not. Leonard and Howard are my friends, Andrew clarified. He thought Pippa considered him kind only because she had seen him hanging out with Leonard and Howard, two nerds at the mall yesterday. It's not because of that. It's just that I've noticed how you interact with people, and it feels like you are always trying to make others feel comfortable, Pippa explained. Noticed? High school started less than 3 weeks ago, Andrew said. He didn't think he had interacted with enough people to be considered kind to everyone. Pippa furrowed her brow slightly and, with a touch of sarcasm, replied, Remember we went to the same middle school, genius? Why do you think my dad and brother are such big fans of yours? She said, pinching Andrew's arm lightly, making him smile. Oh, that's right. My memory's not as good as yours, teacher, Andrew responded, laughing as he lightly tapped her forehead. His intent was to make a playful gesture, as if he were tapping her brain to emphasize his comment, but the gesture came off more like an attempt at flirting. They both fell silent for a moment, looking at each other, the air between them slightly tense. Pippa, initially surprised by the touch and the closeness, stayed still, unsure of how to react. Andrew, for his part, didn't seem to realize there was more to his gesture than just a joke. However, as the silence stretched on, he began to feel a little awkward. You're right. Sometimes I forget not everyone has a memory as perfect as mine, Pippa said after a few seconds, trying to steer the conversation away and hide her nervousness behind a casual attitude. Just then, Andrew's phone started ringing, and when he saw who it was, he frowned. It was Veronica, his cheerful and talkative girlfriend, or rather, the girl he'd been in some sort of fake relationship with, though only he knew that. What's wrong? Pippa asked, momentarily forgetting the previous tension. Nothing. Andrew replied, putting the phone back in his pocket without answering. Pippa raised an eyebrow, curious, and said in a playful tone, ignoring a call? And here I thought you were kind to everyone. The things one comes to learn about. Andrew glanced at her briefly and smirked. If I answer now, I could be stuck talking for an hour, and I really need to head home. I'll call her back when I get there, don't worry. My reputation for being kind to everyone is still intact, he replied. Well, if you put it that way, I have no choice but to believe you, Mr. Kindness, Pippa said, laughing a little. Glad to hear that, Miss Perfectionist, Andrew said with a smile. Andrew said goodbye to Victor and Josh, and Pippa walked him to the door. Don't forget to send me photographic proof that your little sister exists, she reminded him. I will. See you tomorrow at school. Goodbye, Barney, Andrew said, waving to Pippa and Barney, who was jumping and licking him enthusiastically as a farewell. He's gone. Pippa thought as she closed the door, letting out a deep sigh. The last moments had been strange, but she couldn't stop replaying them in her mind, their faces so close, Andrew's finger lightly touching her forehead. Is he gone already? Victor asked, peeking through the doorframe leading to the living room. You should invite him over for dinner sometime. We didn't even get to talk about football, Josh complained, also poking his head through the doorframe. Wait, you guys were watching. Stop being so nosy. Pippa exclaimed, indignant. Look who's talking. Josh shot back as Victor burst out laughing. It was rare for the queen of nosiness to tell someone else to mind their own business. Chapter 33, Talk to Haley and Alex. So, you agree to go out with Veronica just to avoid rejecting her in front of everyone? And now you want to break up with her because you can't stand her and she takes up your free time for video games? Haley asked, sitting on the edge of her bed and looking at Andrew, who was sitting beside her. After leaving Pip's house, Andrew went to his aunt and uncle's home for this important conversation with his cousin, Haley. He needed advice on how to break up with Veronica discreetly. Exactly, Andrew said, nodding. Haley stared at him silently for a few seconds before she couldn't hold it in any longer and burst into uncontrollable laughter. It's not funny, Andrew said, slightly indignant. For him, there was nothing amusing about the endless phone calls with Veronica or the dates. I should have guessed you said yes because of that. Haley said, still laughing. I worried for nothing. She added under her breath, though Andrew heard her. Worried about what? Andrew asked. Yeah? Oh, nothing. Why don't you just end the relationship? It's been 2 weeks, it wouldn't seem strange if you did, Haley said quickly, stopping her laughter and changing the subject. Yeah, I know, but I don't want to be the one to end it, you know? I already went out of my way to minimize Veronica's emotional damage by not rejecting her in front of everyone. If I'm the one to break up with her, she'll still be sad and her ego will take a hit, Andrew explained. To him, it would end up being similar to rejecting her publicly, though less extreme. Sometimes I forget how mature you are, Haley said, looking at Andrew with a small smile. Mature? Please. That's not maturity. That's just fear of taking responsibility for other people's feelings, Alex said from her bed, looking up from her book. Shut up, Alex. You're the last person who should talk about other people's feelings. Andrew is trying to be considerate, Haley snapped, glaring at her with a frown, clearly annoyed by her interruption. Considerate? Agreeing to date someone just to avoid hurting their feelings in front of everyone, then not wanting to be the one to break up because that might hurt them too. Yeah, super considerate, Alex said sarcastically. The best way to handle this is to treat her like an adult. Tell her the truth, even if it's uncomfortable. It's not your job to carry the weight of her emotions, Alex added, adjusting her glasses. Mind your own business, Haley growled, grabbing a pillow and hurling it forcefully at Alex, who failed to react in time and took the hit square in the face. Don't throw pillows at people's faces. Alex exclaimed indignantly, tossing the pillow back awkwardly. Haley dodged the pillow easily, but it ended up hitting Andrew, who was too lost in thought to notice what was happening. Ha! Your strength is pathetic. Instead of studying so much, you should work on your coordination, Haley said mockingly, crossing her arms with a smug smile. Maybe Alex is right, Andrew said, setting the pillow aside. Haley turned to him with wide eyes. Seriously? Alex's advice on girlfriends and boyfriends? She asked, unable to believe what she was hearing. Alex, on the other hand, smiled smugly. I knew someone in this family would eventually recognize my wisdom. Though, of course, not everyone is smart enough to do so, she added, glancing pointedly at Haley with the last remark. No. You're not doing that, Andrew, Haley suddenly said, placing her hands on Andrew's cheeks and forcing him to look her directly in the eyes. I'm not? Why not? It seems like a reasonable solution, Andrew said, blinking. He thought about what Pipa had told him earlier that day, that he was kind to everyone. She had meant it as a compliment, but taking it to an extreme might be counterproductive. Could it be that always trying to avoid hurting others was causing more problems than it solved? Agreeing to go out with Veronica just to avoid rejecting her in front of everyone, enduring long conversations and dates that took away time for his own interests. All because he wanted to be considerate or kind. In the end, the one most negatively affected was himself. I can't always be kind to everyone, Andrew said, looking at Haley, who was still gripping his cheeks tightly. Well, it seems he's finally understanding that you can't save the world by being the knight in shining armor 24/7. Welcome to the realistic side of life, cousin, Alex said in a mildly sarcastic tone. Shut up, Alex. Haley shot back, glaring daggers at her. She wasn't about to let Andrew follow Alex's advice. He came to her for help, not Alex, and she wanted to be the one he thanked. Andrew came to me for advice, not you, Haley added, letting go of Andrew, who sighed in relief as his cheeks were finally free. So, what's your advice? Andrew asked. You don't have to break up with Veronica directly. What you need to do is, make her realize you're not as interested as she thinks. That way, she'll decide to end the relationship herself, Haley replied with a confident smile. And how exactly am I supposed to do that? Andrew asked. It's simple. First, respond to her messages, but without much enthusiasm. Be short, but not rude. Reply with things like okay, sure, or all right. Nothing more. If she wants to call you, make excuses to avoid it. And for every 3 dates, cancel 2 or 1, saying you're busy, tired from training, or something like that, Haley explained, raising a finger as if giving a lecture. That sounds a little cruel, Andrew commented, tilting his head. It's not, Haley insisted. You're not being mean to her, you're just showing that you're not as interested. Trust me, she'll realize soon enough that it doesn't make sense to stay with you if you're not showing the same enthusiasm. And what if she takes it the wrong way anyway? Andrew asked, still hesitant. Haley placed a hand on his shoulder. She won't. Veronica's smart. Sure, she might feel a little disappointed, but trust me, it's better than going down the direct breakup route, like Alex suggests. Why would breaking up directly be worse? Andrew asked. If you break up directly, you'll have to talk to her face to face. That's inevitable. And, Andrew, in that conversation, she's going to ask you why you're leaving her. At that moment, there are a lot of ways things could go wrong, Haley explained, and Andrew saw her point. In that talk, he might accidentally say something clumsy that would make her realize he agreed to date her just to avoid rejecting her in front of everyone. If that happened, it would be the worst-case scenario, as Veronica would figure out that the relationship started out of pity or social pressure. On the other hand, if he followed Haley's plan, Veronica would naturally realize that things weren't working and decide to end it herself. Plus, she wouldn't feel humiliated or deceived. All right, I'll do it, Andrew said, nodding. Great. In 10 days, she'll break up with you, and you'll be back to your routine, Haley said with a smile. Isn't she your friend? You shouldn't be happy about this, Alex chimed in snidely, once again butting into the conversation. Haley shot her a murderous glare but said nothing. Time to leave, Andrew thought, glancing at the time on his phone. Andrew said goodbye to his cousins and the rest of the family. It was late, and he needed to get home. Haley walked him to the door. Oh, one more thing, Haley said, grabbing Andrew's wrist just as he was about to leave. What? Haley hesitated for a moment, biting her lip slightly before speaking. Well, if you're really going to follow my plan, there's something I forgot to mention. What is it? Andrew asked. You should cut back on kisses and displays of affection with Veronica, Haley said, crossing her arms. No holding hands, no spontaneous kisses. You know, so she starts noticing that things are changing and picks up on the signs. It's part of the process. Really? Won't it cause more trouble if it's that obvious? Andrew asked. Haley knew that Veronica had already kissed Andrew, who, in his role as her boyfriend, had felt obligated to kiss her or hold her hand. Otherwise, his lie might unravel, and Veronica might even assume he was gay. To avoid that, Andrew had decided to kiss her and hold her hand. If you keep acting like the perfect boyfriend, she'll never realize something's wrong. Besides, it's not like you're pretending you're just not interested in her that way, right? Haley said. Makes sense. All right, I'll do it, Andrew nodded, finally saying goodbye to Haley and heading home. He's gone. Haley thought as she closed the door, letting out a heavy sigh. She headed back to her room, only to find Alex watching her with a faint, teasing smile. What? Haley asked, her tone sharp and impatient, a stark contrast to how she'd spoken to Andrew earlier. I have to admit, I'm genuinely surprised, Alex remarked, closing her book with a deliberate gesture. I thought that, with how annoyed you've been about Andrew's relationship, you would have supported the advice for him to break up with Veronica directly, she added with a sly smile. She and their mom had noticed Haley's mood shift ever since Andrew got a girlfriend, though Haley wasn't exactly known for being in the best mood to begin with. Haley frowned, clearly confused and visibly irritated. What are you implying? Why would you say that? What's wrong with my plan? Nothing, technically. Except that it's way longer and more dramatic than necessary. If you'd just told him to break up with Veronica, this whole thing would be resolved by tomorrow. Don't get me wrong, I just thought you'd want this relationship to end as quickly as possible, Alex explained. Well, you thought wrong, Haley said, sitting on her bed, signaling she was done with the conversation. But Alex wasn't. Her goal was to get under her sister's skin. I thought you were upset because Andrew got a girlfriend, and you seemed so happy when he told you it was a fake relationship, Alex said. That has nothing to do with it. All I want is to help Andrew. He asked me for help because he doesn't want to hurt Veronica. That's why I suggested a more subtle, less aggressive approach, Haley explained, trying to keep her composure. So, it has nothing to do with Andrew being in a relationship and you, well, you know, being jealous, Alex said, tilting her head slightly as she scrutinized Haley. I am not jealous. That's ridiculous. We're cousins. Haley exclaimed indignantly, a blush quickly spreading across her cheeks. Yes, cousins. Andrew is adopted and joined the family when you were 5, Haley. You don't even share blood or any formal relation. He's more like a childhood friend, Alex said with an amused smile, clearly enjoying how much she was irritating Haley. That has nothing to do with it. Haley shot back quickly, her blush deepening as she pointed a finger at Alex. Andrew is like my older brother, okay? I've known him since we were kids, and I've always seen him that way. So, stop making things up, she added, storming out of the room. She knew she couldn't win this argument, and the last thing she wanted was to give any further explanations. Alex stayed on the bed, watching Haley leave with a satisfied smile on her face. Chapter 34, Pipa's Invitation. Friday, September 27th. Almost 2 weeks had passed since Andrew had met at Pip's house to lay the groundwork for their programming project, a video game, Flappy Bird. A game Andrew remembered vividly from his past life, although in this timeline, it would still be 5 years before anyone even thought of creating it. However, in this reality, the creators would be him and Pipa. Andrew felt no guilt about claiming the idea. The possibility of future profits was worth the price, which wasn't all that high. He didn't need to work 24/7 or invest massive amounts of money. The development of Flappy Bird was going smoothly. In just 2 weeks since they began, Andrew and Pipa had made significant progress compared to the rest of the class, where most were still stuck on more basic tasks except for Leonard and Howard, though their focus was on creating a more complex and scientific tool, not a video game. Professor Smith, who spent time reviewing each group's progress, couldn't hide his surprise at how far Pip and Andrew had come. Unlike Leonard and Howard, they had a clear idea of what they wanted to create. During one of the classes, Professor Smith observed the code on Pipa's screen closely and nodded with admiration. It's clear you've had a solid vision from the start, he commented with an approving smile. Well, the idea for the game is entirely Andrew's. He already knew exactly what he wanted to do, said Pipa, adjusting some gravity parameters at that moment. Oh, that's great, Andrew. Do you want to be a video game developer as well as a quarterback? Asked the professor with a slight smile, glancing at Andrew, who was known for football. However, he hadn't yet taken off in the high school team since he was still a backup. Video games are just a hobby, football comes first, Andrew replied with a peculiar smile. His programming skills were slightly above average, and the idea for Flappy Bird wasn't even his. The project's progress was due to several key factors. He knew exactly how he wanted the game to work, and Pipa's programming skills were far beyond what was expected of a beginner. Her ability to learn quickly and turn Andrew's ideas into code was impressive, while he, with his prior knowledge of the game, acted as a guide to avoid mistakes and save a lot of time. Moreover, they didn't limit themselves to working during school programming classes. They met on Saturdays or Sundays at Pipa's house to continue developing the game. They got along surprisingly well, considering that just a few weeks ago, they were little more than classmates. The last class on Friday was programming. Once the bell rang, signaling the end, Pipa and Andrew started packing up their things. Andrew had practice later, a lighter, more tactical session, as his team was playing an away game at another school's field that night. Do you realize that if we keep this pace, we'll have the game ready in 6 weeks? Pipa said as she closed her backpack and slung it over her shoulder, looking at Andrew. The professor had given them a 10-week deadline to complete the project, expecting something simple, a basic tool or a straightforward video game. However, Flappy Bird, despite its minimalist appearance, had a level of complexity that placed it far above the expectations for a group of 9th graders just starting out in programming. This project was an excellent opportunity for Pipa's academic record. Yet, when we launch it to the world, we'll be teenage millionaires, Andrew said with a faint smile, already imagining the money coming their way. The downside would be the legal process, given they were minors, but luckily, his father was a lawyer. I didn't know you cared so much about money, Pipa said, raising an eyebrow as she looked at him. You can't deny that a nice check also helps keep morale high, Andrew said with a shrug. True, Pipa agreed with a nod. Neither of them was passionate about programming or game development. Pipa did it mostly because she enjoyed studying a bit of everything, and Andrew, more than creating video games, enjoyed playing them or, in some cases, recording them to upload to YouTube. See you, Andrew said, waving goodbye to Pipa. Wait, Pipa said, grabbing his arm. What's up? Andrew asked, curious. I wanted to ask. Pipa began, her tone different than usual, hesitant. She went silent for a second, her mind going blank before her thoughts swarmed in. Come on, Pip. I've been preparing for this for the past 2 days. It's not that hard, just say it, she scolded herself in her head, a habit she had whenever she got nervous. After the game, I'm hosting a small get-together at my home, it's not a big group. I just wanted to know if you'd like to come, she finally said, looking at Andrew with nervousness she tried her best to hide. Oh, Andrew said, unsure how to respond. Oh. Pippa repeated, thinking her invitation was about to be rejected. It's fine if you don't want to, Pippa quickly added, noticing Andrew taking a few seconds to answer. No. Andrew exclaimed suddenly, startling Pippa, who flinched in surprise. I'll go. I was just wondering if Howard and Leonard could come too, Andrew said, trying to justify his earlier hesitation. This wasn't entirely untrue. He'd had a conversation with Howard during one of their late-night gaming or movie marathons, where Howard had practically pleaded that if Andrew ever went to a party with girls, he had to invite him. That's what friends do, according to Howard. Pippa glanced toward Leonard and Howard, who were standing by the door a few meters away, watching them. They seemed to be waiting for Andrew. Sure, they can come. They'll get along fine with everyone else, Pippa replied. Her friends were pretty normal, not the stereotypical popular crowd, but also not as geeky as Howard, Leonard, or even Andrew himself. Great. See you there, Andrew said with a smile. Great. See you, good luck with the game, Pippa said before quickly leaving the classroom. What just happened? Andrew thought, scratching his head as he walked over to Leonard and Howard. Pippa's behavior had been so strange, and even his own felt off since they started talking about hanging out later. Happy talking to your new girlfriend, Andy? Howard asked in an envious tone. Shut up, she's not my girlfriend, and call me Andrew. It's weird when you call me Andy, Andrew said, rolling his eyes. Break up with Veronica, and you already have another girl. It must be great being a popular athlete, Howard said, stroking his chin. Maybe he really should try the training Andrew was always pushing him to do. But he shook his head. He wasn't ready to endure that much physical pain, and besides, his coordination was terrible. Sure, he could improve his physique, but his lack of coordination was a disaster. He'd never played sports, except during PE classes, and the thought of catching balls, passing, and moving fluidly on the field terrified him. He was clumsy, lacked agility, and his poor coordination made him feel like a fish out of water. As for Howard's comment, Andrew wasn't with Veronica anymore. Just as Haley had predicted, Veronica broke up with him in 10 days. Actually, it was 9. And Andrew noticed she seemed to move on much faster than he expected. Veronica's popularity skyrocketed after becoming the girl who dumped Andrew. She climbed the school's social ladder and landed a spot among the most popular cheerleaders. Andrew couldn't help but laugh to himself. Veronica seemed far happier now than she ever had while they were dating. Teenagers, after all, cared more about popularity and image. And Veronica, apparently, had prioritized image over a real connection. Andrew didn't mind one bit. He was perfectly fine with everything being superficial. As for his image and popularity, he couldn't care less. He'd gladly bury it. All he wanted was to play football and video games. Being single is great, Howard. One day, you will understand, Andrew said with a relaxed smile. Now he was a free man, able to dedicate his time to football, video games, and everything else he loved. God gives bread to those who have no teeth, Howard said indignantly. It's way too early for you to pull out your religious sayings, Howard, Leonard cut in with a mocking smile. Did you hear that from your mom or something? Leonard was a teenager entirely focused on science. His mother didn't believe in any religion, so he'd grown up in an environment completely detached from those concepts and even viewed them with disapproval. Anyway, Pippa invited me to her house for a get-together with her friends. You're both invited too, Andrew said. We'll finally get to meet Lauren and Karen. Howard exclaimed with a smile. Andrew looked at him with a strange expression. How do you know those two names? He asked, a bit confused. Those were the names of Pippa's best friends. Andrew, having visited Pipa's house several times, had heard them mentioned in conversations and eventually remembered them. But Howard wasn't friends with Pipa. "Oh, that was easy," Howard said with a proud smile. "I looked them up on Facebook." "Seriously?" Andrew asked, not understanding Howard's proud grin. "Yeah, you know, since I figured you'd eventually follow through on the promise we made before, I knew I'd end up meeting her friends. And, well, it's always good to be prepared," Howard replied. "Whoa, that's very smart of you, Mr. Stalker. I'm sure the girls will be thrilled when they find out you thoroughly browsed their profiles," Leonard remarked, and Andrew laughed. "They'll never know if you two don't say anything," Howard said shamelessly. "See you at the game tonight. Be there so we can go to Pipa's house together," Andrew said, saying goodbye to the two as he hurried off to practice. Chapter 35, Nutritional Jokes. "We must play like we did in the first game of the season. We must crush them," exclaimed a middle-aged man, moderately muscular and sporting a large mustache, as he looked at the group of teenagers in front of him. His name is David, and he is the coach of the high school football team that Andrew belongs to. Currently, Andrew was in the last practice session before tonight's game. The Friday practices before a game are supposed to focus on tactics and be less intense than earlier practices for obvious reasons. However, they had just endured an intense training session that left everyone sweaty, muddy, and out of breath except for Andrew, whose superior physical condition was thanks to both his discipline and his genetics. As for tactics, they hadn't touched on any of that. They didn't review strategies, analyze tonight's opponent, or create a game plan. It was all motivational talk, which Andrew found to be empty words, since motivation alone wouldn't win them the game. So far, the team had played 2 games. The first was a friendly match that Andrew's team won, although neither he nor his friends were starters. The seniors and the coach celebrated that victory as if they had just won the damn Super Bowl. The second game was last Friday. It was the season opener, an important, significant match. However, as Andrew had predicted, his team lost by more than 14 points. A blowout. The only ones who managed to secure starting positions were Kevin and a guy named Ralph, who had played with Andrew in middle school. Ralph's position was on the defensive team. Beyond that, no one else had managed to replace any of the main seniors, no matter how much better they performed in practice twice, 3 times, or even more. Reggie and the others were running out of patience. If they lost another game, it would be very difficult to maintain a good record and qualify for the playoffs, let alone dream about becoming district champions. Still, despite the beating they had taken, the incompetent coach didn't make any changes to the starting lineup. He kept Jason and his friends in their positions. Andrew had expected this. He had already noticed the coach's incompetence. The man would arrive late to practices, just like Jason. The training sessions were lackluster, and tactics or strategy. Those words didn't seem to exist in David's brain. "It's what I expected from a school like this," thought Andrew. His school didn't have a competitive football program. He knew that. After all, the coach was related to one of the players. That kind of thing didn't happen in schools that took football seriously. Andrew, because of his record in middle school, his 70-yard pass, leading an underdog team to 2 district championships, and being named MVP in both tournaments, had received offers from several high schools in California with competitive programs, but he turned them down. He wanted a bigger challenge. In his past life, he had attended one of those schools with a great football program. He had learned and improved a lot, surrounded by teammates and coaches at his level. But now, his skill level was far beyond what it had been back then. On the other hand, if he could lead this team to success, his fame and reputation would grow exponentially, attracting the attention of college scouts. Besides, he wasn't alone. He had rigorously trained Regis, Archie, Kevin, and the others so he wouldn't be surrounded by incompetence. He knew football was a team sport. No matter how good or talented he was, he couldn't win a state high school championship on his own, surrounded by weak players. This wasn't the same as middle school or elementary school. "I said we must crush them," David exclaimed, noticing that no one was motivated by his speech. "We'll crush them," Jason and his friends said in unison, their tone far from enthusiastic. Today, they were facing a team better than last week's, and they were in the same condition as in the previous game. Andrew, Archie, Reggie, and the other freshmen stood at the back, staying silent. "That's the spirit. That's all. See you at the buses in a few hours," said David, wrapping up the practice. Let's go, Andrew said to Reggie and the others, who were frozen in place, each lost in their own thoughts. The others followed Andrew. The group walked to the locker room in silence. After changing and cleaning up, they headed to a restaurant to uphold their pre-game ritual. But this time, spirits were low, and almost no one spoke. They had never been in a situation like this before. They were always starters and winners. Something similar had happened during their first year of middle school, but even though they didn't win the district championship, they still secured starting positions and finished second. A young woman approached their table. She was the waitress who always served them. She had light brown hair tied up in a messy ponytail, lively amber eyes, and a relaxed demeanor. She wore an olive green shirt and a black apron with her name on the upper corner, Olivia. "Hey, guys! What's with the long faces?" Olivia said, greeting them with familiarity and enthusiasm. Andrew raised a hand in a brief wave, forcing a smile. "The mood's down, we're still sad benchwarmers," he joked, trying to lighten the atmosphere. "Benchwarmers? So what? Remember, Andrew, even the greatest started on the bench," she said, winking at him, trying to lift his spirits. "She's right," Andrew said, glancing at his friends, but they didn't seem very convinced. "Well, let's cheer you guys up with some food." "The usual for you, Andrew?" Olivia asked with a warm smile. "Yeah, thanks, Olivia," Andrew replied, unsurprised that she already knew. Olivia nodded and pulled out her notepad. Looking at the others, she asked, "And you guys? What do you want?" "I'll have the usual too," Steve said, staring at the table and playing with the napkins. The only thing that could lift his mood was eating a lot. Steve. The usual. I don't think I've memorized your order yet. But if you tell me now, I promise to remember it next time, Olivia said, raising an eyebrow. "Wow, favoritism much. You only remember Andrew's," Steve said indignantly. "He's the real food lover of the group. Not Andrew, who always orders the same thing and only cares about food in terms of calorie count, protein intake, and maintaining a strict, balanced diet." Andrew calculated his macros with near-scientific precision, always prioritizing practicality over taste. It's because Andrew is predictable. Chicken breast, Caesar salad, whole grain bread, and water. Always the same. It's easy to remember, Olivia explained. "That's not predictable, that's discipline," Andrew interjected, defending his choice. "Discipline is just a fancy word for boring," Steve replied with a mocking smile. "Food is meant to be enjoyed. I'll have a cheeseburger with extra cheese and large fries. No calorie counting for me." "Did you forget it's supposed to be a light meal?" Kevin asked. "Yeah, Steve, or are you planning to roll across the field instead of running?" Reggie added with a smirk that made some of the boys chuckle. That's it, teasing Steve helps lighten the mood, Andrew thought, as if he'd just had a revelation. "Why worry? I'm going to be on the bench anyway. So let me enjoy my burger in peace," Steve retorted. "You're right about one thing, Steve, you'll be on the bench. But if they put you in the game, I hope those fries and burgers give you enough energy to run more than 2 meters without needing a break. You know, the combination of saturated fats and processed proteins in that kind of food isn't exactly what your body needs for optimal performance. In fact, it could make you feel slower than you already are," Andrew said with a slight, teasing smile. An awkward silence followed Andrew's explanation. No one said anything, the others exchanged confused looks, unsure if it was a joke or an unsolicited nutrition lesson. Just then, Olivia let out an exaggerated, fake laugh. "Oh, saturated fats and processed proteins. Are you talking about processed meat? How clever!" she said, clutching her chest as if she'd just heard the funniest joke in the world. "I knew you'd get my joke. Does it make sense now, guys?" Andrew asked with a smile, looking at Olivia, who nodded in agreement. The rest just chuckled nervously, not adding anything. Olivia finished writing down their orders and tucked away her notepad. "I'll bring everything out in a few minutes. Good luck tonight, Andrew. Starter or not, I'm sure you'll make your presence known," she said with a smile before walking away. "Hey man, she's totally into you," Reggie said as soon as Olivia was out of sight. Yes. Who in their right mind would laugh at such a bad joke?" said Steve, supporting Reggie's earlier point. The others nodded and looked at Andrew with mischievous smiles. "Hey, what's so bad about my nutrition joke? You can learn and laugh, what more do you want? Andrew said, giving the table a light tap. Learn, yes. Laugh, no, Kevin replied, and everyone agreed. Seriously? You guys are the problem. I've made plenty of nutrition jokes, and they've gotten good reactions, Andrew said, crossing his arms. At that moment, Archie raised his hand as if he'd just realized something. Wait a second, are the only people who laugh at your jokes girls? He asked. Andrew muttered, thinking back to the people who laughed at his jokes. Only images of girls laughing at his nutrition jokes came to mind. Yeah, just girls, he finally admitted. Now do you see why only girls laugh? Kevin asked, sharing a knowing look with Archie and then Andrew. Oh, yeah, Andrew said with a grimace. It seemed that only the girls interested in him laughed at his nutrition jokes. That's great. You've got a way to tell if a girl's into you. Just crack one of those jokes and bam. You'll know if she wants to kiss you or something, said Steve with a smile. Oh, true. A perfect indirect method, Reggie added, stroking his chin. The only thing is, it could go really well or really badly, you know? If the girl laughs, everyone wins. But if she doesn't, you're just the weird guy telling jokes about saturated fats, hoping someone finds it funny, Kevin said, and everyone burst into laughter except Andrew. It was supposed to be about teasing Steve, not me. Andrew thought, but he didn't say anything. At least the mood had lightened, even if it was at the expense of his nutrition jokes. Back to the point. Ask that older girl out, Reggie said with a smile. She's 19. Andrew replied, looking hesitant. The idea of dating an older girl was appealing to Andrew. Considering both his lives, he was mentally around 25 or 26. Although he had relived his childhood and never truly faced the responsibilities of adult life. That's the best part. A 19-year-old girl wants something with you. Reggie said, excited and a bit envious. The others started cheering Andrew on like a group of chimps hyping each other up. All right, enough. I'll do it when I'm the starting player and have something to brag about, Andrew said, unable to deny that, at some point, the idea of having a relationship with an older girl had crossed his mind. After all, he was still a heterosexual guy. Everyone started clapping as if they had just secured starting positions themselves. After a few minutes of waiting, Olivia returned with the food. After eating and chatting, they headed to the buses to make their way to the rival school's field. It was time for the game. Chapter 36, Family Discussion. Dunphy House. If he wants to play with his friends, then let him play with his friends. You will not decide where my son will play. Shouted Mitchell, red with anger, at Jay. In the Dunphy living room, a discussion that had started just minutes ago was quickly escalating in intensity. Since it was Game Friday and this time they were playing an away game, the family had gathered at the Dunphy house to head to the visiting field together. As for Andrew, he wasn't with them because he would be traveling on the school buses with the rest of the team. The argument was started by Jay, who told Mitchell that Andrew shouldn't be playing for a 5th Division high school given his athletic level. The CIF, California Interscholastic Federation, divides the football system into 13 divisions, which represent varying levels of competition among schools. The first division is the highest, where schools with the strongest programs and most well-prepared teams are found. As the divisions decrease, the competitiveness and overall level of the teams progressively drop. Andrew's school is in the 5th division, an intermediate level that, while not lacking in talent, does not offer the same competitive intensity as the higher divisions. Andrew chose to stay at this school as a personal challenge. His plan is to climb divisions year after year, eventually reaching the 2nd or 1st division to win the state's most prestigious and significant championship. That is his primary goal. Schools in the lower divisions have access to state championships within their own division. However, these state championships are limited to the division in which they compete. Teams playing in the higher divisions, such as the 1st and 2nd, have access to the most prestigious state championships, encompassing the top teams from across the state. During his time in middle school, Andrew had been a star, achieving a pass of over 70 yards, winning 2 district championships, earning outstanding records, MVP awards, and more. Because of this, several 1st and 2nd Division high schools offered him a spot on their teams. However, he turned them down, and Mitchell and Cameron respected his decision. But Jay didn't share the same perspective as Cameron and Mitchell. He thought Andrew was being immature and throwing his future away. Jay couldn't understand why Andrew would reject the chance to join a higher division school with more advanced football programs and the possibility of competing at the most prestigious state level. Jay doubted Andrew's ability to carry the team on his shoulders and lead them to climb at least 3 divisions, especially since, in his opinion, the team lacked talent. Not everyone had the talent Andrew possessed, and it wasn't just about the players. The coach, the sports program, the infrastructure, all these factors mattered too. Even if Andrew's talent somehow managed to perform a miracle and take the team to the top, Jay believed it would be too late to truly compete in a significant state championship. Colleges offering prestigious sports scholarships focused on first and second division teams and their state championships. After all, Andrew would only have 1 year to play at higher division levels, a limited time to adapt to an entirely new level of competition. Friends? We're talking about his damn future as a professional. He can't make decisions based on friendship, said Jay with exasperation. Jay and Mitchell stood facing each other in the center of the living room. The others, Claire, Gloria, Cameron, Phil, Alex, and Manny, sat on the couches watching the argument, which seemed like it could go on for a long time. As for Haley, she was in her room getting ready, and Luke was playing in his room, who knows with what. Professional? It's his first year of high school, Phil interjected, raising his hands in a conciliatory gesture. Maybe we're putting too much pressure on him. This is the time for him to have fun, enjoy the game, and spend time with his friends. Dad, Phil's right. We should respect his decision, added Claire. Although she was competitive, they couldn't force Andrew to attend a different school. If he wanted to play with his childhood friends, so be it. Fun? Respect. Jay repeated, glaring at them. Andrew isn't just any kid. He's always saying he's going to be a professional and win a Super Bowl. That's why I, as his grandfather, take it so seriously. How could I not, when he sets those goals for himself? He added, and the room fell silent because the old grouch had a point. As the argument in the living room dragged on, an unexpected voice broke the silence. Mom, do you think Miss Robbins will like this poem? Manny asked, oblivious to the argument and uninterested in the family drama. Manny had spent the last few minutes writing a poem at the coffee table. Gloria, who had been examining her nails and was equally disinterested in the family drama since she knew nothing about football and how it was organized, looked at her son with a warm smile. Let me hear it, mi amor, she said affectionately. Manny cleared his throat, adopting a theatrical stance as he held the sheet of paper in front of him. With a solemn tone, he began to recite. The light of your class brightens my days. Miss Robbins, you're pure inspiration. A wise guide with a great heart. Your teachings are a special gift. Thank you for everything, my favorite teacher. Gloria hugged him, moved. It's beautiful, Manny. I'm sure Miss Robbins will love it. Miss Robbins? Your English teacher? Jay asked, and Manny nodded. Jay sighed internally but said nothing. He'd already had a discussion with Gloria about this and decided it was best not to comment. Now then, Jay said, returning to the main argument. Is nobody going to say anything? I'm right. I'll talk to Andrew and make sure he transfers to another school at the end of the semester, he added, crossing his arms with the confidence of someone convinced they had already won the argument. Well, technically, Grandpa has a point. Also, I have something else to add to this discussion. Andrew is always kind to everyone. Don't we all remember how he agreed to go out with that girl just so he wouldn't hurt her feelings? Alex said with feigned innocence. Everyone nodded, recalling the incident with Veronica, which was a well-known story in the family. What does that have to do with transferring schools? Mitchell asked, frowning. It's obvious. It's probably the same reason he won't leave his 5th division school. He doesn't want to seem like the kind of person who abandons his friends. Andrew is too kind, Alex replied, adding fuel to the fire, which was her goal. Jay let out a huff and threw his hands in the air. Aha! See? That's exactly what I'm saying. He's making immature decisions based on friendship and feelings, not on what's best for him. Maybe he wants to achieve something great with his current team, said Phil, siding with Mitchell and Cameron. The argument continued, with Phil supporting Mitchell, Claire staying neutral though she was slowly leaning more toward Jay's side. Alex returned to her book, satisfied with what she had stirred up. Enough, everyone! Kem shouted in a sharp tone, suddenly standing up from the couch. Everyone fell silent and turned to look at Cameron. Jay, I take my son's future very seriously, said Cam, and Jay nodded slightly. He was aware of Cam's football past and understood the importance of these decisions. And Andrew takes his future even more seriously than we do. This isn't an immature decision or one made for friendship, Cam continued, taking a deep breath. Everyone nodded in agreement. If anyone was serious about his football future, it was Andrew. He never missed his training, followed his nutrition plan, adhered to his daily routine, and displayed a discipline that proved how serious he was about becoming a professional. What do you mean? You said he didn't accept the other schools so he wouldn't abandon his friends, said Claire, narrowing her eyes and looking directly at Mitchell. Yes, we lied, admitted Mitchell, no longer hiding the truth. Alex was right. Andrew is kind to everyone, Cameron interjected, taking the lead. Except when it comes to football. Exactly. If there's one thing where Andrew puts friendship second, it's football. He didn't stay at his school for his friends, he stayed because he wants a bigger challenge, Mitchell explained. A bigger challenge? Claire repeated, raising an eyebrow. That's right, confirmed Cameron. Andrew doesn't just want to join an established first or second division team. He wants to take a team in a lower division and turn it into something great. He wants to prove that he can lead them to success. That's the reason he gave us, but if we'd told you that, what would you have thought? Mitchell added, crossing his arms. It would have sounded like he was being arrogant, like he thought he was the only one who could help that team move up divisions. And we didn't want everyone to see him that way. The room fell silent again until Jay suddenly burst into laughter, breaking the tension. Everyone stared at him, surprised, expecting some sarcastic remark. But instead, Jay shook his head, and a smile spread across his face. That's a much better reason than that friendship nonsense, said Jay with a proud smile. It's not arrogance, it's ambition. And that's not a bad thing, especially in this sport. What? Asked Claire, confused. Now you agree with him. Of course I do. It shows he's different from the rest, replied Jay, shifting from anger to satisfaction. So, you're not going to insist that he switches schools? Mitchell asked, still a bit skeptical. That hasn't changed. But I'll give him, at the very least, a year. A year to prove with actions what he's saying. I'll trust him, but if he doesn't manage to move up even one division in that time, then I'll be the first to tell him to find another team, Jay replied. It's good to reach an agreement. Although if that happens, I doubt you'll be able to change Andrew's mind. He's more stubborn than you can imagine when it comes to football, said Cam, and everyone laughed because it was true. At that moment, Haley came rushing down the stairs, glanced toward the living room, and was surprised to see everyone there, deep in conversation. What are you all doing here? Why didn't anyone tell me it was time? You're going to make us late for the game. Haley exclaimed, a bit flustered as she adjusted her bag and gave her makeup some final touches. Oh, Haley finished getting ready first. That's new, said Alex, looking up from her book. Usually, Claire had to rush Haley to finish getting ready so they wouldn't be late for the game. Let's go, let's go. Move it. Cameron shouted, rushing toward the door when he noticed the time. Chapter 37, The Game. The game against Wilson High School had begun with great energy in the air. Wilson High School had won the 2 games they played so far, the friendly match and the first season game, so they were in high spirits, and playing at home overshadowed the visiting fans. Mitch, Cam, and the others found a spot in a raised corner of the visiting stands. From there, the view wasn't the best, but they did their best, along with the other parents and families from Andrew's school, to make their cheers and applause heard. However, their efforts were constantly overshadowed by the thunderous support of the home crowd and the harsh reality reflected on the scoreboard. 2 quarters of the game had already passed, and Palisades High School, Andrew's school, was losing 35-10. Andrew's team sucks, Jay. And you complained about the thrashing my soccer team got, Manny said, glancing at the scoreboard as the 3rd quarter began. For Manny to make a comment like that was unusual. Normally, he preferred to spend his time writing melancholic poems or seeking love in his many muses rather than getting involved in sports. Really, Manny? Jay said in his signature dry tone. Right now, with this score, you decide to pay attention to a sport? Of all possible moments, you pick this one. It's tragic, at least it'll inspire a poem. Oh, and I can give Andrew a motivational speech, just like he always gives me, Manny replied with a faint smile, waiting for the moment to get his revenge. Manny, don't say that. It's not funny, Gloria scolded, trying to understand what on earth was happening on the field. She couldn't figure out why teams sometimes attacked and other times defended. Come on, Andrew. You can turn this around, it's only a 25-point difference. Lily supports you. Kim exclaimed, standing up with Lily and trying to cheer, though his attempt was drowned out by the rival chants. I don't think this is the best environment to bring a baby. Claire commented with a critical look. Do you think Andrew can do something from the bench? Like he has psychic powers? Mitchell asked with a frown, frustrated with the coach's decisions for not putting Andrew in and leaving Jason, an incompetent quarterback who hadn't made a good pass all game. A few seats away, Leonard and Howard were talking in low voices, not even paying attention to the game. Sports weren't their thing, and although they were friends with Andrew, he didn't force them to attend school games because he knew they didn't enjoy them. Leonard and Howard were there because later that night, they would go to Pipa's house. Finally, there was going to be a gathering with girls. Howard was the most excited since he would finally have a chance to approach a girl in a more private setting within a circle of friends. Leonard was happy, too, since he could expand his social circle and talk to a girl, but he wasn't as demonstrative as Howard. This is our big chance, Leonard. I'm finally going to talk to Kara. A real conversation. Do you know what that means? Howard said with an eager smile. Let me guess. Leonard replied with a thoughtful look. Are you going to talk to her about her favorite movies, favorite bands, and how she hates indiscriminate tree cutting? Leonard added, raising an eyebrow at Howard. Exactly, I've told you before, Howard nodded confidently. Stalking her on Facebook seems to have worked for you, Leonard said, shaking his head. As for him, he wouldn't stoop so low. He'd try to let things happen naturally if possible, or at least avoid making a fool of himself. It wasn't stalking. It was strategic research. It's totally normal. Everyone does it, Howard justified himself without a hint of guilt or shame. Sure, everyone does, Leonard replied, choosing not to press further since it was pointless. A few rows above Leonard and Howard, Pipa sat with her close-knit group of friends, Kara, her best friend, Lauren, Connor, and Zach, friends she had known since she was 10 years old. What's wrong? Zach asked, looking at Kara, who, for some reason, shivered and hugged herself as if she had suddenly gotten very cold. I don't know. I just got a chill out of nowhere, Kara replied, rubbing her arms to shake off the sensation. Lauren, always quick with a joke, grinned. Maybe someone's talking about you, she said with a mischievous smile. What if it's not something good? Lately, I've felt like someone's been watching me all the time, you know? That feeling that someone's staring at you, but you don't know who or what. Kara said with a dramatic expression. It could be the evil eye, or worse, some obsessed stalker, Lauren added, though she didn't seem overly concerned. Another one of your crazy, out-of-nowhere theories? Connor asked, rolling his eyes and letting out a small smile. Pay attention to the game, Pipa interrupted, clearly not sharing her friend's humor. Her gaze was fixed on the field, where Andrew sat on the bench with an expression of frustration and reluctance as he watched his team get crushed. Oh, come on, Pip. Why do you care so much? It's not like Andrew's going to change anything from the bench, Connor said in a tone meant to sound casual but laced with a hint of mockery. And what do you know, Connor? Andrew isn't on the field because the coach won't give him the chance, not because he can't make a difference. You saw him play in middle school, or have you already forgotten he won 2 district championships and was MVP? Pippa shot back, narrowing her eyes at Connor. Connor shrugged, feigning indifference, though his jaw tightened slightly. That was in middle school, Pip. This is different. Maybe he's not at the level everyone expected. Really? Or does it just bother you how good he is as a quarterback? You should question the coach's decisions more, not a player who's proven what he can do before and hasn't been given a chance, Pippa shot back firmly. Wow, Pip, calm down. I think even Andrew could feel how hard you're defending him from here, Kara added with a nervous giggle, trying to ease the tension. Luckily for Connor, at that moment, a loud uproar from everyone around them quickly drew attention back to the field. What happened? Did they score another touchdown against us? Muttered Zach, who had been following the argument between Pippa and Connor. No. They tackled our quarterback, and it looks like he's injured, commented Victor, Pipa's dad, who had known her friends for many years. The earlier argument didn't matter to him, he was entirely focused on the game, being a big football enthusiast. Dad, does that mean? Asked Josh, Pipa's younger brother, standing up from his seat with a look of hope replacing his earlier expression of defeat. Yes, son. Victor nodded, cutting him off. A faint smile began to form on his face, the first since this dreadful game started. On the field, Jason lay on the ground clutching his arm and groaning in pain, or so it seemed. With the help of his teammates, he removed his helmet and looked toward the coach on the sideline, gesturing at his arm. The referees, noticing the signal, quickly approached, and Jason, between gasps, indicated that a substitution was necessary. The referees wasted no time and raised their hands to signal a player change. The coach, already aware of the situation, signaled to Andrew. Andrew, who had been sitting on the bench the entire game, immediately jumped up and started warming up. He quickly finished, put on his helmet, and readied himself to take the field. The visiting stands, which had been silent until then due to the humiliating defeat, erupted into cheers and applause as they saw Andrew heading onto the field. "Let's go, Andrew!" Cameron shouted, standing up enthusiastically. "Crush them!" Claire yelled, clenching her fists, eager to see the look of defeat on the home crowd's faces. Andrew, with his helmet securely in place, walked confidently toward the line of scrimmage, the imaginary line that separates the teams in football and marks the starting point for each play. The referee signaled for him to get ready as the opposing team lined up in their defensive positions. 40-yard line. A long way to go, Andrew thought, glancing at the clock. They were 2 minutes into the third quarter. The team needed to advance more than 60 yards to reach the end zone. "Let's do this!" Andrew murmured with an excited smile. Finally, he would get to play a real game after so long. He was going to enjoy himself and, of course, crush his opponent. Chapter 38, The Game 2. Recommended soundtrack, Eyes Healed 21, Be Survivor. Andrew crouched behind the center, his eyes quickly scanning the opposing defense. The linebackers looked ready to lunge at him. "I have to lead players with whom I have never practiced and without a clear strategy from the coach, TSCH, Andrew muttered to himself. "Set, hut!" Andrew shouted, and the ball snapped into his hands. Instead of stepping back to prepare a pass, Andrew made a quick move to his right, faking out the nearest defensive lineman. "He's going to run!" Someone on the opposing team shouted, but by the time they said it, Andrew was already surging forward. With his impressive speed, thanks to his training and genetics, he covered a significant number of yards in just a few seconds. Rarely in previous games had he showcased his speed and reflexes to evade defenders, as it wasn't necessary, his passes always hit their mark. But right now, he didn't trust the receivers or the non-existent strategy from the coach. He would have to score a touchdown himself. As Andrew continued charging ahead, a defender dove for his legs, but he lightly sidestepped, causing the defender to collide with another player who was about to lunge at him. He managed to reach the 50-yard line in a single run, and no one had stopped him yet. In football, you get 4 attempts, or downs, to advance 10 yards. If you fail to gain those 10 yards within the next 3 tries, you lose possession of the ball and hand control over to the opposing team. By advancing 10 yards, Andrew ensured that if he was tackled now, the team would have another set of 4 downs, starting the next play from the 50-yard line closer to the end zone. They would keep pushing until they scored a touchdown. "Come on, Andrew!" Pipa shouted from the visitor stands, clenching her fists nervously. Her father, brother, and friends, except Connor, were also cheering for Andrew, many surprised by his incredible speed and reflexes to dodge players. "Yes, yes! Dodge them all!" Claire shouted. Oh. Is that Andrew?" "I can't see well," Leonard said, squinting and adjusting his glasses for a better view. He didn't recognize Andrew and didn't even understand the rules of football, but if everyone was cheering enthusiastically, it must be a good sign. Howard, next to him, shrugged since he didn't understand anything either, but he started cheering along because everyone else was doing it. "Run, you training maniac!" Howard yelled. Andrew kept pushing forward, reaching the 60-yard line when a linebacker tried to block him. With a sudden spin move, Andrew left the defender with empty hands and a confused expression. What just happened, the defender thought. At the 70-yard line, Andrew was still running. The home crowd was shouting in frustration, as was the opposing coach. "Take him down, damn it! Somebody stop him!" When Andrew reached the 82-yard line, two defenders, coordinated and fast, closed in on him from opposite sides. Andrew tried to juke them, but this time, he had no way out. He was tackled hard. He fell to the ground, rolling over to protect the ball. The defender's hands gripped him tightly, but he didn't let go of the ball. The whistle blew, and the play was over. "First down. A 42-yard gain." The announcer's voice boomed over the speakers, as the visitor stands erupted in cheers. "That's it!" Jay exclaimed, his voice hoarse with excitement and a satisfied smile on his face, giving a high five to Phil, who was the closest to him. "Ouch!" Phil muttered, grabbing his hand with a pained grimace he tried to hide, though it didn't matter since Jay's eyes were fixed on the field. What's wrong with Andrew's team? Nobody helped him, not even to block a single damn defender. They're useless. Pipa exclaimed angrily, though she was thrilled by Andrew's incredible success in advancing 40 amazing yards in a single down. Pip. Kara murmured, still processing the intensity in her friend's tone. "That's the spirit, my girl. Shout louder!" Victor exclaimed with a grin. On the field, Andrew quickly got up, brushing the dirt off his uniform. "Not bad. If I'd had some support from my team, I could have gone further," Andrew thought. His seniors hadn't been able to follow and support him, though he didn't blame them entirely since he hadn't told them he was going to run and needed backup. The opposing defenders were panting and visibly frustrated, staring at him as if they couldn't believe what had just happened. The team gathered in the huddle, surrounding Andrew. Their gazes were a mix of respect and amazement. Even the seniors, Jason's close friends, seemed to start questioning their loyalty to the starting quarterback after witnessing Andrew's performance in that play. Andrew had only needed one play in a real game to make such an impression on the seniors. "We'll repeat the previous play," Andrew said in a firm and direct tone. "No over-the-top emotion, no motivational speeches. This time, I need someone to follow me and block the first defenders that come at me. I'll fake right but cut left. I want the receivers to stay alert. If I see an opening, I'll pass the ball. If not, I'll take it myself," he added, giving clear instructions. "To your positions," Andrew ordered without waiting for a response. The team nodded without objection. There was something in his tone and posture that inspired immediate, almost instinctive confidence. Everyone quickly lined up in their positions. "Set, hut." The ball snapped perfectly into his hands, and the play began. Andrew faked to the right, drawing in the defenders, but in a swift motion, he changed direction to the left, dodging a linebacker who lunged into empty space. A lineman teammate followed closely, blocking the second defender who tried to intercept Andrew. Andrew ran with even more speed than before, leaving everyone stunned. Just a few yards from the end zone, two defenders closed in on him. Andrew performed a lateral jump to avoid the first hit and twisted his body to absorb the impact of the second defender, but he didn't stop. He pushed forward with all his strength, crossing the goal line while cradling the ball tightly in both arms. "Touchdown!" roared the loudspeaker, accompanied by a deafening explosion of cheers from the visiting stands. "Yes!" Cameron and Haley squealed, hugging and jumping up and down. Phil enthusiastically lifted Luke, who was cheering happily even though he didn't fully understand what was happening. He just knew his cousin was doing what he always did, crushing the competition. Jay and Mitchell hugged each other until Jay realized what he was doing and awkwardly pulled back, slightly embarrassed. "Do you see it now? Andrew can lead this team to second or even first division," Mitchell exclaimed with a proud smile, not noticing Jay's mild embarrassment from the hug. "Ahem. Let's not celebrate just yet, there's still a quarter and a half left to play," Jay said cautiously. Andrew didn't raise his arms, smile, or do anything celebratory. He adjusted his helmet and calmly walked back to his team. Now they had the chance to either kick for an extra point or attempt a 2-point conversion. For the extra point, the ball had to be kicked from the 15-yard line through the uprights, earning 1 point. To go for a 2-point conversion, the team would have to carry the ball into the end zone through a play, either a pass or a run, from the 3-yard line. This was riskier. Teams typically opted for the extra point unless they were desperate for more points. Andrew's teammates on the field weren't sure how to react. Some still felt uneasy about the situation, glancing at Jason on the bench. He sat there injured, watching the game in clear surprise like most of the crowd. Others were simply unsure what to make of Andrew's cold and composed demeanor. "Well done, Captain! Kevin exclaimed, giving Andrew a high five, which he accepted. For the first time, Andrew showed a faint smile. We're going for the 2-point conversion, Andrew said, immediately returning to his serious tone. It wasn't a suggestion, it was a statement. Really? Why not just kick the extra point? One of the linemen asked, looking at Andrew with doubt. We always kick, it's a guaranteed point, said the kicker, who was usually in charge in these situations. The coach always instructed them to take the safe point. We're losing 35-16. Playing it safe won't get us back in this game, Andrew said, his tone firm and unwavering. No one argued further after seeing the serious, no-nonsense look on his face so different from the friendly demeanor he usually had at school. Andrew and the rest of the team lined up at the 3-yard line. That's when everyone began to realize they were going for the 2-point conversion. What the hell are they doing? Andrew's coach muttered. This wasn't the plan after a touchdown, but it was too late for him to intervene. Set, hut! Andrew shouted, receiving the snap. The opposing team was already poised to stop him, with their linebackers in position. But Andrew moved quickly and with agility, executing a fake that completely fooled the defenders, who were expecting another rushing attempt. This miscalculation by the opposing team gave Andrew the time, the gap, and the opportunity he needed. With a quick and precise throw, he launched the ball a clean pass straight into the end zone. The ball arrived at just the right moment, and the receiver caught it effortlessly, landing inside the end zone. 2 points. 35-18. Palisades High School wakes up and gets back in the game, though they still have a long way to go before they can celebrate, the announcer shouted, followed by a roar from the visiting crowd. Did you see that pass, Dad? That was incredible! Josh exclaimed, jumping out of his seat. Yes, that was amazing! Pipa shouted with a smile, not realizing her brother wasn't talking to her, but she didn't care. Josh looked at his sister with confusion, momentarily distracted from the euphoria of seeing his team score. He had never seen her this enthusiastic about football games. He knew she understood the game, she was smart and had to watch the matches because of the family, but she'd never shown much excitement before. Andrew approached the coach and the rest of the team, who were looking at him with a mix of happiness and doubt. The ones celebrating loudly and giving him high fives were Reggie, Archie, Steve, and the others. The cheerleaders, who had positioned themselves in a corner of the stands, began jumping and waving their pom-poms with excitement after the successful 2-point conversion and the touchdown. Veronica was among them. She looked at Andrew with a swirl of mixed emotions but said nothing, focusing on her job as a cheerleader. Coach, Andrew said, removing his helmet and looking at David. What is it, Andrew? The coach asked in a serious tone, not showing any irritation about the 2-point conversion decision. This wasn't the moment to reprimand Andrew. Can I play defense? I'm fast, and I can tackle. We need to do something to stop their offense, Andrew requested, his tone direct yet respectful. The coach paused, thinking. It wasn't entirely uncommon for a player to play both offense and defense. Considering Andrew's speed, agility, and strength evident when he'd been tackled and immediately got back up, it wasn't unreasonable to let him join the defensive lineup. All right, but don't overexert yourself, David finally replied. Andrew returned to the field, this time with the defensive team. Many were surprised to see him back on the field so quickly. Chapter 39, The Game 3. Another successful 2-point conversion for Palisades High School, shouted the commentator, his voice amplified by the loudspeaker. Mitchell, Cam, Jay, and everyone in the visiting stands cheered and applauded enthusiastically at yet another successful 2-point conversion by their team. This is an epic comeback. 35-34. They're just 1 point behind. Since player number 19, Andrew Pritchett Tucker, entered the game, Palisades High School has scored 3 consecutive touchdowns and successfully converted all the 2-point attempts, the commentator said, his voice filled with surprise and excitement. As a neutral commentator, witnessing such an epic comeback was the best thing that could happen to him, not only as a sports fan but also to make the game commentary even more thrilling. That's not all, Mark. Since Andrew stepped onto the field, he hasn't just transformed Palisades' offense but has also dominated on defense. Wilson High School hasn't been able to score another touchdown since he joined the defense. This kid is leaving his mark on both sides of the game, the analyst commented, his tone a mix of awe and admiration. Yes, incredible. Now Wilson High School takes the offensive. There are only about 4 minutes left in the game, the commentator exclaimed with a serious tone. If Palisades wants to win, they need to stop this offense quickly and get back to scoring. Time is gold, he added. We're good on time. The only thing is, they can't score, Andrew thought. He had to keep a cool head. There were almost 4 full minutes left. The opposing team burned time, taking their time to line up, which drew complaints from Coach David and several players on the bench. Set hut! Shouted the rival quarterback, and the ball snapped into his hands. Wasting no time, he handed it off to his running back, who quickly chose the left side, where it seemed fewer defenders were positioned. But he had made a grave mistake. That was Andrew's zone. The running back lowered his head and charged forward, confident he could break through the gap. However, Andrew had already read the play. His body tensed as he calculated the perfect moment to strike. As the runner reached the line of scrimmage, Andrew moved like lightning, lowering his body and executing a textbook tackle. With one arm aimed at the runner's midsection, Andrew struck with devastating force, stopping him dead in his tracks and driving him to the ground with a sharp, resounding impact. The crowd gasped collectively, both home and visiting fans instinctively wincing at the painful tackle the runner had to endure. "Oh my God! What a tackle by Andrew! That even hurt me!" exclaimed the commentator. It was the first time Andrew executed such a fast and powerful tackle. He didn't have time to go softer. He had to shut down the offense as quickly as possible. The opposing running back lay motionless for a few seconds, struggling to catch his breath. His teammates helped him up as he shook his head, clearly reconsidering whether he wanted to touch the ball again. "Don't give me the ball again," the running back muttered. His quarterback gave him a puzzled look but simply shook his head. They gained a mere 2 yards and had only 3 downs left. If they continued down this path, they'd lose possession and have no chance of reaching the end zone. They needed to go for a pass. The play resumed. "Set hut!" shouted the Wilson School quarterback as the ball snapped into his hands. He began to retreat, scanning for a passing lane while his linemen worked to protect him. Seeing his linemen collapse as 2 massive defenders charged toward him, he made a hasty decision. He spotted his nearest receiver, seemingly in a perfect position to catch the pass, and threw the ball with all his strength. But Andrew had already read the play. He'd had enough time to follow the quarterback's eyes, allowing him to leap at the perfect moment and intercept the pass with both hands. The visiting stands erupted into a deafening roar. "Interception! Andrew Pritchett Tucker does it again!" the commentator shouted, his voice brimming with excitement. "Is this kid everywhere or what?" Andrew landed with the ball securely in his arms and began to sprint. Just 50 yards, Andrew thought, determined to end the game. His feet pounded the turf as he pushed forward, eating up the yards. "Hoo-hoo!" yelled Kevin as he hurled himself with all his strength at a massive lineman trying to stop Andrew's run. Kevin managed to bring the lineman down, tackling him to the turf. At Andrew's request, Kevin had also joined the defense. Coach David couldn't deny a request from his sudden star player, who was now leading both the offense and defense. Taking advantage of the opportunity Kevin created, Andrew continued his run. Another defender tried to catch him from the side, but Andrew accelerated, leaving him behind. One of the opposing running backs charged toward Andrew. He caught sight of him out of the corner of his eye. Dodging him will be difficult, he thought in a split second. However, a shout broke through the tension. "Stop right there, you bastard!" yelled his team's defensive leader, who launched himself at the rival runner, tackling him to the ground and pinning him there. "Run, Junior!" the defensive leader shouted, giving Andrew a thumbs up. The defensive leader felt deeply guilty for all the points they had conceded today. As the leader of the defense, he considered himself responsible for it, although Andrew didn't entirely agree. It wasn't that the defensive leader didn't share some of the blame, but the real fault lay with Jason, who had repeatedly lost the offensive position. Jason's passes had been inaccurate, often ending up in the hands of opposing defenders or falling incomplete. His mistakes had cost them possession multiple times, leaving the defense exposed and exhausted, repeatedly facing Wilson High School's advances. Thanks to the defensive leader's assist, Andrew made it to the touchdown line. Touchdown! A perfect pick six! The commentator shouted with excitement. The term pick six referred to when a defensive player intercepted a quarterback's pass and returned it directly to the end zone, scoring a defensive touchdown. It was a highly valuable and celebrated play because it not only stopped the opponent's advance but also earned points for the defensive team. The visiting stands, though smaller in size, were on their feet, roaring with applause and cheers for Palisades High School. Phil lifted Luke into the air, the boy laughing as he was tossed up. Claire hugged Haley, a rare sight, and even Alex joined in, offering a faint smile and clapping calmly. Mitch and Cameron embraced tightly, an unusual display for Mitch, who often struggled to show affection in public. Jay, usually stoic, clapped with a wide smile and even let out a whistle. Pipa celebrated by hugging and bouncing with Kara and Lauren, while Zach clapped enthusiastically from the side, a smile on his face. The least enthusiastic among them was Connor, who clapped with minimal energy. Excited to meet tonight's star? Zach teased, glancing at his friend. He knew exactly why Connor wasn't thrilled about Andrew. Connor had liked Pipa since middle school but had never mustered the courage to make a move. Now, with Andrew entering their lives and growing closer to her, it left Connor feeling uneasy, as though he had a rival. And not just any rival. Andrew was the most popular athlete in their grade, a two-time middle school champion, and now delivering an extraordinary performance, turning what seemed like a certain loss into a comeback victory. To make matters worse for Connor, he and Pippa's group of friends had learned that Andrew was visiting her house on weekends to work on a programming project. Connor didn't like this one bit, but there was nothing he could do to stop it. After all, he wasn't in any kind of relationship with Pipa. The scoreboard updated: Palisades High School 40, Wilson High School 35. Andrew held the ball high, smiling behind his helmet. Finally, he could relax a bit. His entire defensive team ran to him, embracing him roughly and exchanging high fives. The offensive team took to the field. Andrew spoke with the coach to decide whether to attempt a two-point conversion, a riskier play, or secure a single point with a kick. The kick was a guaranteed point, bringing their score to 41 and leaving them one touchdown ahead of the opposing team. However, if Wilson managed to score a touchdown, they would tie the game, and with their own kick, they'd reach 42 points to take the lead. Considering the limited time left and how solid Palisades' defense, especially with Andrew, had been, the coach opted for the safer route, the kick. Andrew obeyed the decision, agreeing with the coach to an extent, although he personally would have gone for the two-point conversion. If, by some unexpected twist, Wilson scored a touchdown, a single-point kick would still put them at 42. From the 15-yard line, the kicker struck the ball hard, sending it cleanly between the two uprights and securing another point. 41 points for Palisades, 35 points for Wilson. The coach had been right. Wilson didn't have much time left, and their morale had plummeted after the stunning comeback by Palisades. As the clock ran down to 0, the referee raised his hands to signal the end of the game. Game over. 35 for Wilson and 41 for Palisades, pulling off an extraordinary comeback victory. The commentator exclaimed, rising from his seat with microphone in hand. The crowd erupted into cheers as Palisades players, both those on the field and on the bench, celebrated their hard-fought victory. Chapter 40, Post-Game. Andrew's team celebrated the victory like never before. The least happy one seemed to be Jason, as he got injured. Although it wasn't serious, or so they told him, he couldn't show his disappointment openly. He smiled and celebrated, but if you looked closely, you could tell it wasn't natural. As for the other seniors close to Jason, especially on the offense, they completely forgot about the starting position dispute and were ecstatic over the team's epic comeback. The leader of the defense, Liam, was thrilled, and the rest of the defensive players felt the same. So was Coach David. His team's epic comeback made him care little about the previous issues of leaving his nephew and his friends as starters. Archie, Reggie, Steve, and Andrew's other friends were overjoyed by the huge victory despite not playing a single minute. They knew this game would change things, with Andrew as the starter. Not because they thought Andrew would demand the coach play his friends, like Jason did, but because now the coach would have to put the players with the best performance during practice, or so they hoped. Andrew headed to the locker room with the rest of the team in a festive atmosphere. After getting changed, they left the locker room to meet up with their families and friends who had come to watch the game. "Hey, Andrew," called Reggie, walking up to Andrew, who was heading toward the exit of the locker room, hoping to find his family and his two friends, Leonard and Howard. "What?" asked Andrew, expecting Reggie to tell him they were heading to Archie's house as usual, sticking to the tradition they always followed after Friday night games. This time, though, Andrew couldn't join them because he had other plans. "Liam's throwing a party at his house. We're invited. Everyone's going, cheerleaders and even the most popular girls," said Reggie, a grin forming on his face. "Our first big high school party!" exclaimed Steve excitedly, joining the conversation. Don't yell, idiot. You're going to make us look like rookies, muttered Archie, scolding Steve. Really? Is Jason going to? Asked Andrew. It seemed the tradition of gathering at Archie's house every Friday after the game would be broken in high school, thanks to teenage parties. Yet, Reggie replied, not too thrilled about it, but he wasn't about to miss the first big high school party. If we gain the confidence of Liam and the rest of the defense, we'll have power in the team. Jason won't be able to do whatever he wants anymore, commented Kevin. Liam, the defensive leader, was in his second to last year of high school, not the same year as Jason. From what Andrew had seen, Liam was a great defensive leader and player, much better than Jason and one of the best at Palisades High School, excluding Andrew himself. Good luck with that, Andrew said, and everyone gave him puzzled looks. You're not coming? Reggie asked. You have to come. You were the star tonight, exclaimed Steve. They hadn't played a single minute. How would they get everyone's attention if Andrew wasn't there? Without him, they were just guys who watched the game from the bench except Kevin, but he wasn't the star of the night. I have plans. Andrew replied, briefly explaining that he was going to Pipa's house, his friend from programming class. The guys already knew who she was since they'd seen Andrew talking to her during breaks or in the hallways. Oh! They all said in unison, looking at him with slight smirks that made Andrew frown. And here I thought you were still upset about Veronica, commented Steve. When have you seen me upset about Veronica? Muttered Andrew, a vein appearing on his forehead. Today, Veronica gave you plenty of looks once you stepped onto the field, said Archie, who had been watching from the bench near both teams' cheerleaders. Yet, she must be regretting breaking up with you, added Reggie with a faint smile. Who knows, if you go to Liam's party, she might try something with you, he added. I don't want anything to do with her. Let her keep playing at being popular, Andrew said curtly with a grimace, and no one else dared to comment when they saw his expression. Rare to see in him expressions of this kind. Andrew agreed to date Veronica for a simple reason, to avoid humiliating her. She had confessed her feelings in front of everyone, in such a public display that Andrew felt he had no choice but to accept, as rejecting her would have embarrassed her deeply. Was it the best decision? Maybe yes, maybe no. But at that moment, it seemed like the most empathetic thing to do. Breaking up with her immediately after agreeing to date her would have been strange and would likely have sparked rumors that could hurt her even more. So, Andrew decided to give it a try and made an effort to be the perfect boyfriend, dedicating himself to making her feel special and taking care of her feelings. However, the relationship proved to be a challenge for Andrew from the start. Although Veronica had some positive traits, like preparing nutritious lunches for him, she was largely self-centered and superficial. She would talk endlessly about herself, rarely giving him a chance to share anything about his own life or interests. Andrew got the sense that, for Veronica, the relationship was more about maintaining her image as a popular girl than about genuine feelings. Eventually, Andrew started following Haley's advice, who suggested he show less interest and stop trying so hard to please Veronica. This shift in attitude didn't go unnoticed, and soon Veronica decided to end the relationship on her own, abruptly and without hesitation. Perhaps Veronica stopped seeing any value in him. Andrew had not only stopped being the perfect boyfriend, also his social standing at high school wasn't remarkable either. He was a bench warmer on the football team, and his popularity was beginning to fade. To make matters worse, rumors about him started to spread. People said he had nerdy interests, like video games and movies that most teenagers didn't consider cool. Far from being bothered or trying to deny those rumors, Andrew ignored them entirely. He didn't care what others thought. The rumors even gained traction when he started spending more time with Leonard and Howard in public places, something he would no longer hide. Andrew had made a clear decision, to live on his own terms, without worrying about others' opinions. At the end of this whole charade, the only one hurt was him. He wasted his valuable time trying to please a spoiled and shallow girl, all to be dumped. Although he actually preferred this, rather than having hurt a girl with genuine feelings. They left the locker room, and Andrew met up with his family. Everyone celebrated enthusiastically when they saw him, especially his parents. Kim hugged him so tightly that he nearly choked him with his strength. He also met up with Leonard and Howard, who had been brought by the latter's mother. Debbie, a very large woman with no neck, chatted with Kim and Mitchell before leaving the two boys in their care, as they would be taking all three to Pipa's house. After that, Andrew told them to wait for him since he wanted to meet up with Pipa before heading straight to her house. Pipa? Who's that? Haley asked Leonard and Howard after Andrew left. Andrew's programming friend. Leonard replied, not understanding why Haley's tone seemed angry. Andrew has a female friend? Never heard of her, and it seems like you haven't either, commented Alex from the side, clearly trying to stir things up. She invited us to her house. We're going now, Howard added with a slight smile, trying to show off a little that he had a social life. She invited Andrew, and he invited us, Leonard corrected. Hey, why are you trying to make us look like losers? Howard whispered to Leonard. She invited Andrew to her house? Why? Haley asked, continuing her interrogation. She's hosting a small gathering with her close friends, Leonard replied. And Andrew is one of her close friends. Haley asked again, this time getting a response from Howard, who noticed the irritation on her face and decided to take a little revenge for when Andrew made them bike until exhaustion only to find out Haley had a boyfriend. Yeah, he's her close friend, though if you ask me, they became close pretty fast. Andrew goes to her house on weekends to work on a project together. They spend hours together, and they have great chemistry, so their relationship progressed quickly, Howard said with a slightly mischievous smile. Chemistry. Haley repeated in an overly calm tone, though it was obvious she wasn't happy hearing this. Oh, Haley, don't be like that. Isn't it sweet? Andrew has a close female friend. It's better than his fake relationship with Veronica, Alex commented with a mocking grin. Haley's frown deepened at this. She knew what her sister was trying to do, but she couldn't help being annoyed by this discovery. Is he not going to Liam's party? Haley asked, trying to calm herself. It wouldn't be good to show jealousy in front of strangers, especially since she was Andrew's cousin. Liam's party? Leonard and Howard asked, looking at each other in confusion. They had no idea who Liam was or what this party was about. Oh, right. They probably weren't invited, Haley thought, sighing internally. She had been invited due to her popularity, and Dylan would also be there since he seemed to be friends with some of the defensive players like Liam. A party after the game? You're not going, Claire said, joining the conversation after hearing the word party. She knew how these Friday night post-game parties worked. She wouldn't let her daughter go to a party filled with older guys where alcohol was likely involved. It was already enough that she allowed her to date a senior. Fine, Haley said, leaving Claire surprised. She had expected Haley to start yelling and asking why she couldn't go if everyone else was. Haley didn't complain, as she had already decided to go to the gathering at Pipa's house, inviting herself along. Andrew, unaware of Haley's sudden decision, finally found Pipa. It had been difficult to spot her among more than 100 people in the parking lot. When he saw her about 10 meters away, he noticed her parents, Victor and Leanne, her mom, her brother Josh, and her group of friends, 2 guys and 2 girls. Pipa was also scanning the crowd for him, and finally, their eyes met. She began walking briskly toward Andrew, and he did the same. Andrew, you were amazing! Pipa exclaimed with excitement and an enthusiastic smile on her face. She had never been particularly interested in football, but this game had her thrilled from the moment Andrew stepped onto the field and began the epic comeback. Thanks. Now we're at an even record, 1-1, Andrew said, happy to see Pipa's enthusiasm. To qualify for the playoffs, the team needed an overall record with more wins than losses compared to the other teams they faced. Before Pipa could continue the conversation, her father and brother, both crazy football fans, arrived and began congratulating Andrew and bombarding him with questions about the game. Pipa wanted to smack both of them on the head, but she held back. Luckily, her mother intervened, dragging Victor and Josh away. We'll wait for you in the car, she said with a faint smile. Unfortunately for Pipa, she still couldn't have a quiet conversation with Andrew because her friends arrived. She had no choice but to introduce them, just Zach and Connor, since Kara and Lauren had already met Andrew. Tell him what you were thinking during the game, Zach whispered with a grin to Connor, who quickly shut him up. Do you want me to end up in the hospital? Connor muttered, recalling Andrew's tackles. The rivals' players had stayed down on the ground for several seconds until their teammates helped them up. Well, see you at my house, Pipa said, realizing that having a quiet conversation here was impossible. They said brief goodbyes. Andrew returned to his parents, where he learned from Haley that she would be going to Pipa's house too. Well, one more person won't make a difference. Andrew thought, shrugging as he got into the back seat of the car with Leonard and Howard. Claire made sure to follow the car and drive Haley. She much preferred this gathering of same-grade friends over a party full of older, popular students.
Thanks for listening.